Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Today is Wednesday, the 22nd of April. Um, so I went to my. Well, first of all, let's watch this thing. Let's start here. Statement of President Donald J. Trump, based on the fact that the government of Iran is seriously fractured, not expectantly so, not unexpectedly so. What do you mean? You said you weren't planning regime change, then you say you are, right? And upon the request of Field Marshal Asim Munir and Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif of Pakistan, we have been asked to hold our attack on the country of Iran until such time as their leaders and representatives come up with a unified proposal. I have therefore directed our military to continue the blockade and in all other respects remain ready and stable, and therefore extend the ceasefire until such time as their proposal is submitted and discussions are concluded one way or the other, President Donald J. Trump. So he's extended, this came out yesterday. I was going to put it in my video last night, but the one's going up today. But, he's only extending because he has no fucking leverage, right? Because Iran's daring him to hit critical infrastructure. Like, they obviously don't think of that as something they're trying to avoid, right? He said in the beginning that he wanted unconditional surrender. So, Tucker Carlson and his gay brother were talking about how they thought Donald Trump didn't want to go into this war, like he was forced into it, whatever. And that, at least now that seems to be the case. Like, at least now he kind of knows that it's not whatever. That, it's not going to go anywhere close to the best case scenario because America just shot their wad there because America can't expend all their Patriot missiles. There was that guy on who said the military industrial complex in America is broken and the Patriot missiles have been depleted through the Ukraine and now Iran. And, we need those short range missiles if there's any kind of a war with Russia and China. And then all the stuff that America's been given to Israel Trump gave Israel everything. That, yeah, like he said, that Bibi was asking him for stuff and they didn't have it and they created it for him. Like Trump said he gave everything that we could give to Israel when he was before the Knesset, right? He was kissing their asses and talking about, all the ways that he provided for them. And so, he's pretty much got nothing left. And like they only have bombers going over there because they have to drop bombs. And, they've depleted some of Iran's air defense, but not all of it because, they still have stuff there. And they're getting stuff from China and whatever it might be, and possibly Russia. And so Trump wants out, but they're not giving him an out. They're not giving him something where he can claim victory. And Israel's sabotaging everything anyway. And so, like, ground troops isn't going to help. And he can't open the strait. Like, unless, we got, like, occupy that country and occupy that whole coastline. Keep that coastline under lock and key. They can't stop the strait from being closed. And, like, it's his fucking retarded, solution was just close it to do a blockade with a couple of warships, which isn't really big enough and isn't long lasting. And they haven't gone after those warships, and they have probably some weapons to go after them. What if they sink one of those with lots of troops on there or something like that? And then Trump is now like obligated to, go after, whatever. So like he's totally fucked, and they got him. He's got no leverage. And ground war. This is not something that Americans want, and it's going to, go poorly. And it's not going to, solve anything. They have a massive amount of military in a huge country. And so, he's making these limp-dick threats that he's not willing to engage in. And if he starts destroying their critical infrastructure, there are going to be countries around the world that are like, hey, this is fucked up, right? You might get condemned by the UN and the rest of it. And so, like, he's out there on an island by himself with a parasitic country like Israel. That, when Israel has a military victory, it's because they're using our weapons, right? Like, they're depleting our weapon stock, and they're bombing the shit out of Lebanon, all that kind of stuff that's going on there. And he's saying that he's going to solve that war. He's going to the war that just was created because Israel took advantage of the Iran war by going in after Lebanon. And so, it's pretty fucked. Like, he's lost support. People know that this is fucked, and it's starting to show up. The gas prices are, have leveled off, but it's going to go back up when people realize that this is a forever fucking war. Then there's going to be huge inflationary issues. All right, so that's the first piece, and we'll come back to this. I'm sure this video is not going up till Thursday at 9 p.m. So, and then they'll take a day off on Friday, so they'll be, how it goes. But let's get to Erica J. Kirk and Charlie Kirk. So I was at the chiropractor yesterday evening, and I was going through Twitter, and I found a bunch of things, and my wife sent me this. So there's 3 things to get to here. Now, Tyler Robinson is a patsy, and he may just go down as a patsy. They might just convict him. But there are a couple things here. Like his defense attorneys seem to be lame, whatever. But here they are. Well, let's just play this here.
Coverage on December 13th, a nationally televised town hall.
It is on CBS.
Let me play you just a little segment of that. And I have a question.
What is going on? Why are there so many conspiracies spreading about what seems to be a pretty open and shut case?
This is the first time that we have seen evil on display where we have social media at our fingertips. Something so evil that happened, people are wanting answers immediately. They are wanting to figure out how to wrap their mind around this. Egyptian planes.
Egyptian
Egyptian
planes. Do you
planes.
believe that Tyler Robinson murdered your husband?
Yes, I do.
Why do you think it is so hard for so many people to believe that reality?
Because it's too simple. Again, everyone always has to think there's more to the story. Well, sometimes there's not. I've seen the autopsy report. I've seen our case pulled together. I've been in constant contact with our lawyers, the prosecuting team.
Those are your lawyers? Your lawyers are the prosecuting team, right? I said this about Trump and her. I don't know if they're going to play Trump quotes. Not just Trump, all these people at the TPUSK events. This is going to taint the jury, right? This is going to... you can't do this. So you can't, especially the president, but I mean, Erica J. Kirk. So what I've always said about this, these are 2 things. Like you're violating due process here. And it isn't some slam dunk because there's going to be some ballistic issues that's going to come up. And, he's just a patsy. When Tucker Carlson they were talking about this, with his gay brother. And he said that Russell Brand was talking about how they always have these lone shooters who always seem to be killing people who have a problem with institutional power, which is what I've been saying for years. There's no motivation for these lone shooters to take out people who aren't, any way affecting them, right? And the Tyler Robinson thing is silly. It looks like it's just being done purposefully to provoke people. I mean, it's definitely divisive for Trump. And the other thing that they were saying was that Trump, Tucker Carlson's gay brother was saying one of the things that made him turn on Trump was that Trump didn't react enough with like heartfelt emotion to Charlie Kirk being killed. And, I covered this yesterday. Trump, the 2 things that Trump has been very not passionate about. Like if you've heard him talk about 40,000 Iranian protesters being killed by their government, right? That's what you hear over and over again. And various soldiers and Americans being killed by Iranians over the years. And he doesn't care about the Israelis killing kids in Gaza or killing Christians in Lebanon and civilians. But the people who are killed by Israel, he doesn't care about. And his own assassination attempt, he doesn't care about. Like, he never talks about it. And he doesn't talk about the guy. But he doesn't also talk about Charlie Kirk, who is supposedly his good friend. Like, he doesn't seem to care because he doesn't care. He doesn't care about people dying. Trump does not care about loss of life. His first term, he seemed to be against wars. He could have got into wars during his first term, and he didn't. That was one of the things I praised Trump for, because he seemed to put an end to these, the Afghan war and the bullshit ISIS thing, which was an American asset. He stopped ISIS from, doing things to, false flag things that were to provoke more conflict. So, I mean, it was good on him during his first term, but now he just seems to be like, I don't give a shit, let's drop bombs at everybody. And so he doesn't give a shit about Charlie Kirk, right? Like, this is, whatever, he brings Erica Kirk out to places because she's still, loyal to him, but she has no fans or support. Like, she's got nothing compared to what Charlie Kirk, DPUSK is a shell of an organization. But, they tainted the jury, right? Like what they said early on about this, and they were convicting this guy. They were basically saying he did it. The guy has a right to a fair trial. And if you really wanted to get the guy, you'd shut the fuck up, right? You wouldn't do anything that's going to help his defense. They're doing things all the time to provoke a reaction, not just from, people, the Candace Owen people and all the Charlie Kirk people that don't believe in the official story. I always say that they had to get Erica. If you want to pull something like this off, you make sure you get his wife. Make sure his wife's on board. But, this is for the public. What she's saying to the Barry Weiss here in the CBS town hall is for the public. It doesn't help with the court case. It hurts the court case, right? Because they're showing how they're picking the jury right now.
I've seen it all. And let me tell you this. Why in the world, why should we, prior to the trial, lay all of our hands and cards on the table for the defense team to see, to somehow then, I don't even know what they would do with it. But what I will say,
you have to do that. There's evidentiary disclosure. There's supposed to be no surprises in court. Like, you have to tell, you've seen TV shows about this, right? They have to disclose stuff. There's no hiding shit, right?
and I want to get on the Egyptian plane thing, take a flight on that for a second. What I will say is what I'm worried about, and I'm fascinated, just from a legal standpoint, to see how the United Healthcare trials pans out. And I say that because this is the first time where we are seeing the implications.
You're talking about Luigi Mangione.
Correct. I prefer never to say any of their names. They do not even deserve the ounce of oxygen and breath out of my body.
You nervous he's not going to get a fair trial?
I'm nervous that there could be, they'll say we can't find a fair jury. Like, they're going to taint the jury pool. And in that case,
that's how widespread you think these conspiracies have gone.
yes.
That's how mainstream they become. Okay.
Egyptian planes.
So one of your categories was inadmissible evidence, right? And I know you're not a lawyer, but you're generally familiar with, there are certain things in a penalty phase of a capital case that a victim impact witness can say, and certain things they can't say, right?
Sure.
Like, you can't express opinions about the defendant, as an example. Why is this sort of coverage prejudicial in relation to her commenting on court appearances and whether Mr. Robinson should have the benefit of discovery, and her opinion about guilt, and the narrator's opinion about the evidence being overwhelming?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's a lot there. I think one, obviously, there's a lot of empathy for the victim's family, and I think that's very appropriate. So she's a credible source, I would say. I think it's not ideal to have a victim saying that due process shouldn't be complied with. The idea of discovery and why are we sharing, exchanging information, which is the way that due process works. And then the references, I've seen the evidence, I know, it's an open and shut case, essentially commenting that he's guilty. And
So I didn't watch this part. Like fucking, I'm not a legal expert. It's just from watching TV shows about this. Like I don't watch a bunch of court cases, but there's I know a little bit about due process, and I know about discovery, like in these things, and when she was talking to Barry Weiss, it was nothing she was saying was going to help convict Tyler Robinson, and it wasn't going to help convince the people who, she's trying to get sympathy, and whatever Erica Kirk is or isn't as a person, whatever lines they're feeding her, whatever script she's reading off of, whatever these things are, whatever like all this stuff is, she doesn't understand why people don't like her, and that she keeps on doing more of the same things. Like this Barry Weiss thing did not help her at all. There's so many memes, so many things coming out of it. And so what she doesn't realize is she has Charlie Kirk people that feel, they're just maybe traditional people who don't have critical thinking skills. And they're just going to, they're associating her with Charlie, their feelings for Charlie, TPUSK. And that's an ever dwindling number. Like, when people have to make a decision just about how they feel about her, when Charlie would roll her out and say, this is my wife. And it was like this, she wasn't being slammed. Nobody was saying things about her. She was not, she was totally appropriate for the TPUSK audience before Charlie died. Like she didn't, her fake crying, her bad acting, her over-the-top intensity, her weird eyes, all that shit. Like that became now, why is she acting like this, right? It's like she, before that no one knew. People may or may not have liked her, but they didn't have an opinion on her. Because she wasn't there in front of she was, they'd roll her out once in a while. She didn't have a lot of FaceTime with the audience. And with people, maybe they didn't like her, whatever. But they were, there was such a feel-good thing. Trump was, going to solve all their problems. He was being allowed this stuff like he was. And so, there was that period of time. And now, people got a good whiff of her, and they don't like the way she smells, right? And she keeps on doing the same things over and over again. And, the more that somebody is in front of you, it's like the Kevin Hart syndrome, right? Where they put somebody in too many movies and TV shows, and then he comes out and he's on the fucking Olympics, and, he's got a podcast, like he's everywhere. And you get too much time, you gotta, people just get sick of you, right? Like people like, start to realize like that guy, whatever his name is, that actor who's married to that woman who got all Blake Lively's husband, whatever. I can't think of his name. Don't tell me, don't care. I don't need to know. I can see his face, but whatever. But that guy is annoying, right? And he started selling fucking alcohol and doing commercials like he had something. He was just everywhere. He was in a lot of movies. And you realize he's not funny. The first Deadpool or whatever, but he's really just annoying. Like the way he does comedy is just annoying. That tongue-in-cheek thing, and he's just, like people realize after a while, like, oh, you're annoying, you're not fucking funny, you're not likable. And so she keeps on going out and doing more damage. And, her talking to the media is not at all going to help this case. It's not going to help because, like, as many people who want to have sympathy for her in Utah, there's going to be people who, are Candace Owens fans on the jury. And they've already made their decision, and it's going to cause the case to crumble. So, like, unless this is a completely staged, we're going to just lock this patsy up. This is why they usually kill the patsy. Like they killed Trump's, fake assassination attempt guy. Or they say there's a dead body on the roof, right? So whatever, like Crooks, whatever his name is. It's Crooks. And so, because a trial is problematic. And, I think that, I don't know what the percentage is, I don't know if there's any real polling data on this, but I would say more than half the people don't believe in the official story. on this thing. At the very least, they think he's got help, and he'd have to have help, right? And so let's wrap this up.
Evidence suggests that would definitely be prejudicial and create a presumption of guilt among prospective jurors. So it's kind of like, a lot of that.
So so that's the first thing. So I was at the chiropractor's office. I can't play videos, so I just send them to my wife. So I have, because Twitter doesn't have a history, and then I have them and I can open them back up. The iPhone messages are also on my MacBook Pro, and so I can open up my messages to my wife and find all the things that I send her and double click on them, and they'll open up in a browser. There's all kinds of strategies I've had to figure out over the years. I'm not a technical person, things that young people know, and they're almost born with it because they start early. That, those of us who weren't, we have to figure out strategies how to, like whatever it is. How I get my videos I'm watching on my phone to, my computer. But anyways, and so I didn't listen to these things, but this person here.
I've been to my fair share of Republican events, and they are all debaucherous. The drinking, the substances, the sex, the this, the that. And recently, I've started going to different events that are more center or left. I went to the World Forum, which is an event with Hillary Clinton, and I spoke about AI governance and AI architect and regulation. And everyone I met there had a family or was leaving early to go see their kids, and nobody was like, hey, you want to hit the club after, like it was with when I would go to these Republican events. There was no rave event after, like at Turning Point.
There's got a stripper in what looks like a champagne glass or something with an American flag draped on her, right? The Republican stuff, this is where it's hypocritical. Like I was talking about Tucker Carlson's gay brother talking about, all the gay people in the Republican Party, going to 2PUS gay. I don't know why they don't have a dude up there dancing, right? But, they have this, these political parties and all these things, they don't stand for the things they say they stand for, right? That's the like this young woman saying that the Democrats had families. Those are heterosexual families. Like that's what I think she's implying, right? Traditional families. And yet they're all LGBTQ. Like, they don't believe in what they say they believe in. Like none of these people do, right? That's the problem. The inauthenticity. And Trump is the most inauthentic person because he doesn't have any authenticity. That's what people loved about him. He didn't act like other people act because he doesn't have a moral compass. He doesn't, have a dogma. He doesn't have any of these things. He's not a Republican. And so him acting this way, he's good at pandering to people. He's good at working a crowd. Like that's his talent. His talent is being able to sell himself. That's where his talent is. Being able to lie and consistently convince people that these lies are the truth, right? Promising things and saying things he can't deliver on. And also doing it so that it becomes acceptable. Like the stuff that Trump has done, no other candidate would get away with. Just all the lies, all the things, promises, all the things he says that are like immediately fact-checked and are wrong. And then switching sides, going back and forth and, saying that NATO won't help, but he doesn't really need their help. And where were they when we needed them? Like he just says all this shit and then contradicts himself. And so, what am I watching here? All right. Here.
And it was
Wait,
for
there
me,
are Turning Point raves? Stop right
yes,
there.
James O'Keefe does a Make America Rave Again event after at all of the Turning Point events, and James should have just been a theater kid, honestly.
They are all failed theater kids. We talk about this all the time.
So that happened. there's debauchery, and really, it's like that. You see, they weren't really all digging the girl; they're all just sitting there lame because they're all gay, right? Okay, Erica Kirk looks exactly like the Bride of Chucky. Now, I've never seen the Bride of Chucky. I'm not a fan of the Chucky movies. I get the Chucky references, like I get Chucky, but I've never watched a Chucky movie, so I didn't fact check to see if that's what the Bride of Chucky looks like. But it's hilarious if it does. And it's 100% about her eyes, right? Erica Kirk's, they've darkened her lips here. But Erica Kirk's eyes are fucked up. Like she has cold, dead eyes. Your eyes are the windows to your soul. Like people who have, spirituality connected to God, there's compassion in their eyes. And they might not even be like people in terms of their personalities, like I've talked about this before. In the Sajmarg system, there are people who are considered like, this is said over and over again, they're considered like mangoes, which they have. Mangoes are very soft fruit. And this has a hard, hard pit, a hard seed in the center. Whereas other people who are spiritual are compared to coconuts that have a hard shell, or almonds that have a hard shell and then something soft inside of them, right? Which people with soft hearts are often, they have boundaries and they push people away because they have a soft heart, where you have people who have hard hearts that act real nice and sweet, but they have hard hearts. And so, the way that you would assess somebody in terms of their inner world is, some of it's seeing their eyes. Is their eyes like, is there light in their eyes? There's eyes reflect a lot. And she has cold, dead eyes, right? And it's not, it's not the color of her eyes, which is part of it. Because, that's an okay color. I mean, it's a good color, baby blue, whatever it is, green, whatever eye color is. It's the, just this, they're steel, like they're steely eyes, right? There's that, I'm not going to play the meme, but Anderson Cooper talking about his, this steely dead blue eyes or whatever. Like some people just have, like if you look in their eyes, it's like it reveals something about them. And she has that where she stares and she's fucked up, like she's been MK Ultra'd or something. She's like a fucked up person, and there's like a hardness inside of her. Like she pretends to be soft and, compassionate, and I pray for all my people, all this bullshit that people, like that person that left that comment saying, I'll pray for you, right? Fuck you. Like, like in a way, if you're saying, I'm praying for you because I think you're a piece of shit, right? Then that's not real prayer. That's like you trying to like look good. I mean, I'll pray for him. I'll pray for them. Like they're all fucked up. I'll pray for them. Like, look, you're a piece of shit. I'll pray for you. That you don't say, like that's a dick fucking move, right? And you're involving God, like you're then at least as much of a piece of shit as the other person. Oh, I'll pray for you because you're a piece of shit. Like any kind of thing. Like, and it's stupid. And like people, it's childish, and people could see through it, right? Smart people can. And so, I mean, this is whatever it is. Let's take a look at Bride of Chucky here. Yeah, she does look like Erica Kirk. These are dolls you can buy. Now, it says Tiff there, so her name must be Tiffany. She's wearing black leather. Remember, Erica Kirk wore those black leather pants, and white and black. That's what Erica Kirk wore for a long time. White and black after Charlie Kirk died. There she is. The eyes, the eyes are definitely similar. And then here, there's for a variety of pictures. But you slap some black lipstick on Erica Kirk, and that's, I mean, they have those things where, like on Facebook, it tells you what celebrity you look like. If Erica Kirk put her picture in there, chances are Bride of Chucky would come up eventually, right? She did enough of those things. All right, speaking of Bride of Chucky, Part 3, she's less intense, though. See, her eyes aren't as hard as, she's very similar in her bullshit, like the fake Barbie Christian truther. She's similar in her bullshit, but not in her. Like, there's not as much cold hardness. There's like, it's like she's not alive either. She's an NPC. Like, there's an anger and an evil behind Erica Kirk's eyes. But remember this, I covered this when it happened.
The president said yesterday for the first time that he had to strike Iran because he believes that Iran was going to strike U.S. targets within 7 days. And then he then bumped that down later to 3 days. Where is he getting that?
Well, that's not the first time the president has said that he chose to launch Operation Epic Fury because he felt as though Iran was going to strike the United States and our assets in the region first. Again, I addressed this in the last briefing.
Okay, so the problem with this was Marco Rubio came out and said that they knew Israel was going to fire in Iran, and then Iran was going to hit U.S. targets in Israel and other places. I mean, they didn't think it would go as far out as it did. And so they figured they would strike first, right? You know, so there was no feeling like Trump lied. Like they all knew Israel was going to act because they couldn't control Israel. And so that's, you know, and people know that. Like when Marco Rubio had to walk back what he said because it didn't go with the narrative because he was talking truth, right? That Israel was going to go out and strike first, which meant American targets would be, you know, they thought they would hit first because then they would have less, Iran would have less things to use against America, less missiles and things to use against American targets. And so, you know, his having a feeling has no basis in it. That's just Trump bullshitting, right? But if it was true, you don't go to war on a feeling. I feel like they're going to strike us first. What the fuck you talking about? Like that's why people are posting this on Twitter. I saw it on Twitter like 5 or 6 times, the same video clip. You know, people are sharing it. Because now it's coming back up that he had a feeling, and no one wants to hear that shit, right? Like you have, you know, a huge intelligence apparatus. Like that was something Tucker Carlson and his brother were talking about in terms of the Charlie Kirk thing. You know, they have this huge spy satellite stuff, and all they got is shitty little grainy videos and a weapon that doesn't match up. I saw another video clip or meme or something about the grandfather talking about his rifle, the one that was supposedly used, like all that stuff. You know, like you don't need feelings. You got like the most intense spy network ever. And, you know, the whole thing. But like this was not about feeling. People will forget about the Marco Rubio thing, but those were connected because they happened. You know, her answer here and Marco Rubio were out like on the same day. And they were conflicting reports because, you know, I think most people know that in some level Israel was forced Trump's hand. Right.
This was a feeling the president had based on facts provided to him by his top negotiators who had been...
Feeling based on facts? Like facts and feelings are different. I don't like facts. In the modern day world, I'm not a fact person. I don't try to do facts here, right? Like I'm not like some investigative journalist. Like I do most of my stuff on intuition and the etheric, right? You know, there are facts involved. But facts, most facts are, like there's mathematical facts. And science should be factual, but it's not because scientists can be bought. But there's so much bullshit out there, people are lying all the time, that things that are considered facts, you know, based in, you know, history, there's historical facts that aren't facts. You know, it's his story, it's subjective. History is subjective. You know, the history is told by the victor. Whoever, you know, wins ends up having their history, but there's also the underground history, and that's where the truth community is. Like, that's why it's more accurate, because people like Trump, narcissists, come in and rewrite history, right? You know, and so it's none of these things are, you know, like what Iran was going to do was not. Iran was no, you know, it's coming out now, and it'll come out later. There was no credible threat that Iran had any intention of attacking America. Just because they say death to America doesn't mean shit, and they back down time and time again. And they weren't, you know, the whole nuclear program lie, right? So all this stuff. And so this thing, like, what a silly thing to say.
Based on facts. This was a feeling the president had based on facts provided to him by his top negotiators who had been engaged with the Iranian regime in a good faith.
You mean Jared Kushner? You're talking about Jared fucking Kushner? That sleazeball, like you to trust that motherfucker?
Effort. The Iranian regime was lying, deceiving the United States of America, clearly trying to...
good thing, like, Trump never lies. America never deceives.
Continue their nuclear program to create a bomb.
All right, so we saw this thing. Just, you know, her face is all fucked up now. She just keeps on getting more and more plastic surgery. Right, speaking of blonde, bimbo, evil... Bride of Chucky's. We have a theme going, an unintentional theme. This was also on Twitter, X.
And when you get ready to move in the fullness of God's anointing, you've got...
Okay, so, you know, there are things that are fucked up in every religion, right? That, you know, anointing somebody. You know, they used to do the anointing there, and I should look it up, but like whatever it is, like putting some kind of, like, I don't know, oil on your third eye, right? All these things, they're just rituals, right? You know, one of the things in Sajmarg, that there's lots of rituals in India, like crazy amount of rituals, like you wouldn't even believe. And, you know, there are all these different places, like they have, you know, all these different languages in India. And in different states, they have, the people are quite different. You know, they might look the same to you in terms of, you know, their dress, you know, but the way that they dress is different. Like there's a place in India, I forget, Rajasthan maybe, where they wear, all the women wear orange saris. And it's a color I really like. You know, it's one of my, you know, sort of like oranges was, as a kid, was my favorite color. And it's like a bright orange, like a light orange. And they have these saris, and they would have these gatherings for different states in India, you know, in the ashram in Chennai, India, in the south. And it would be filled up with these women wearing these clothes, and it'd be everywhere. Like if you were sitting like on a roof or a, you know, a high up place, you look down at the, you know, there's a big open area, and there'd be all these, you know, all these saris, these colors there, right? And their food is quite different. And so, you know, they have these rituals, and the second master of the system, Babaji, talked about how the rituals were often, you know, I mean, they've lost whatever good there was, whatever truth there was. But it's just like I talk about with Christianity. You know, Jesus he had an audience of Jewish people in Rome in 2,000 years ago, right? And so the teaching that he had was specifically for those people. And there's things that are done, rituals, anointing, physical things, you know, that have nothing to do with connecting to God. They're physical things, right? But it's a big thing because they make it like there's some, you know, spiritual benefit to it, and it's not, right? You know, anything that's done spiritually has to be done internally. You go in and you close your eyes, and prayer and all these things, they happen inside of you. But, you know, this stuff is performative, like what she's doing here. So there's a lot of emotion. It's a way to grift people, and, you know, and people feel a certain way. They feel energy from a good pastor, from somebody, a good grifter. Okay, so that's when my microphone cut off because the batteries had worn out, and I, you know, knew this was going to happen, and I didn't change them yesterday. So I did about another 10 minutes of voiceover there. We'll go back to the Paula White thing in a second here. So, you know, but if you have these grifting pastors, they have energy, right? They have a lot of spiritual energy, not spiritual energy, emotional energy, low vibrational energy. And people are like, you know, sort of dead inside NPCs, and they feel something, like they feel the energy. And there's a group consciousness, and there's a motivation, and there's, you know, there's a cadence. They have ways of, like, the way that they talk, and Jesus, and they have this way of, you know, rhythmically, you know, moving the audience like you do in a concert or something like that. And there's energy in it, right? But it's all physical energy. There's no spiritual energy there. There's nothing godly. It's a way. And then they grift and they ask for money, right? They get your money. Because, you know, people who are dead inside feel something, right? People who are, you know, feel a lower level emotion, and they feel emotional, and you know, low gut emotions, right? Excitement and things like this. But, you know, let's go back to this thing I was talking about, Jesus anointing. Jesus anointing, the anointing of Jesus is a significant event recorded in all four canonical Gospels through scholars and traditions debate whether they describe a single incident or four separate occasions. These accounts generally feature a woman pouring expensive perfume on Jesus while he was at dinner, serving as a prophetic act that Jesus himself identifies as a preparation for his upcoming burial. Matthew, Mark, the accounts are nearly identical. An unnamed woman in the home of Simon the leper in Bethany pours expensive perfume on Jesus' head 2 days before Passover. The disciples criticize the waste, but Jesus defends her, stating that she was preparing his body for burial. And then there's John and Luke. But, you know, it's not, let's see if there's a images part here. You know, it's not a real thing. This Jesus, there's a woman who washed Jesus' feet. But that's a physical thing. Perfume is, you know, it's something for your scent, and oftentimes, I mean, I don't know, like, I don't like strong perfumes and all that fake, you know, stuff, the scent and Tide when people have that on their clothes. And, you know, as a kid, I used to wash when I was in college, I washed my clothes with normal detergent, maybe Tide, you know, whatever was there, you know, and had that chemical smell. It didn't bother me. But I was doing drugs and I was, you know, whatever. But as I become more sensitive, which is something we're going to get into here with Paula White, we get back to that clip, you become more spiritual, become more sensitive to such things and unnatural things and whatever. Strong smells like perfume is like, you know, sometimes people wear that like cheap perfume and it's like, you know, it can make you nauseous, right? Like just whatever. So, but her pouring the perfume over his head, that's a physical thing. Even if it's good perfume, any of these types of things, it's a physical thing, right? I don't know why this is not coming up here. It's something, I don't know. But this picture here of him doing that, you know, it's physical. These rituals that they have in India, like I talk about, and then of course Christian rituals, they're physical rituals. You know, if everything that happens spiritually happens from within. Let's go back to Paula White here.
And when you get ready to move in the fullness of God's anointing, you've got to conquer positionally anything that would be over you. If you don't pull down the stronghold, it doesn't have to be everything, but the devil can have one area of your life. And if you don't get victory in that one area, he will hold.
In one area, like this cadence that they use, right? They have this cadence and this way of talking that evokes an emotional response, right? And then the crowd all feels it, like you like it's a comedian that, you know, I mean, it's like you're almost like hypnotizing the crowd, right? You're pulling them into a direction that you want through humor or through, like, you know, if it's you're saying some kind of victim story or sad story or emotional story, like, you know, these ways of, you know, getting the crowd to go to a certain place with you, right? And then you're like, pull out your fucking wallets and give me some fucking money, right? Like it's.
And if you don't get victory in that one area, he will hold you back, because positionally you have to conquer. That's what a stronghold is. The devil has a strong hold on you, and you can.
And also the movements, like, you know, public speaking and these things, there's hand movements, and they train you to do this, like, you know, in terms of speeches. And like politicians suck at it. I mean, these pastors are much better at it. But, you know, it looks crazy, like it's hard because it's, you know, it only appeals to a certain group of people. But by using certain hand movements and language and things, you know, inflection in your speech and whatever, they draw you in. But it's all lower vibrational shit. It has nothing to do with God.
Prophesy and you can have money.
Okay, so going back to where she's talking about these strongholds. See, what this is samskara. And they don't have a cleaning system, and they don't have a method in Christianity. Like you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, and like you can say the words. What does that mean? Do you have to sign a contract? Is it legally binding? Do you have to just say the words? You know, I accept Jesus as my Lord and Savior. You say those words, and that's enough, right? Because, you know, like you can say you can get married on the first day. You can just meet somebody and say, "Hey, let's get married." And there might be some excitement and whatever, but there's no commitment. You don't know the person. And you can say the word, you can have vows, like people make marital vows, and they break them. You know, it's supposed to be forever. You know, they say forever. You know, people say whatever, you know, till death do us part, right? That we'll, you know, I mean, that's how it used to be. Like you get married to one of you, died, there's no divorce, right? But now there's divorce, so divorce is already there. It's a part of the system. Like divorce is a possibility. You know, like that's just part of what marital life is. And so, you know, saying those words, what if you say that you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, and then you just go out and you do be like just a horrible person? Does that, you know, so there's no method, right? There has to be a method. You know, in fact, you know, the Lord and Savior accepting that has nothing to, it's not something that you can quantify. certainly not on a spiritual level, right? And it doesn't mean shit. It's not real. It's fake as fuck, right? Like, so no one can die for your sins. There's none of this stuff. So, a method would be in the Sajmark system. There are these things, ancient Indian teaching where the soul was discovered in India many years before any of these religions came about, and there was research done, spiritual research, epiphanies, and people would go to deep meditative state and have an understanding how this works. And some skaras are impressions that you form either in this life or in past lives. Like alcoholism, for example, would be a stronghold that she's talking about, that the devil has a stronghold. But you have some skara, a predisposition to alcohol. Like there's a great Simpsons where that alcoholic character, Barney, is an Ivy League, uppity, waspy kind of, rich old money person going to like Harvard. And he doesn't look like he does in the, that they draw him as like a confused alcoholic. And he takes a drink and his whole face shifts and he becomes the Barney that everybody knew, right? His backstory was that he, took that first drink of alcohol and then he fell off he fell out of his whole life. And, you have these things inside of you. Like there's good things. Like if you have these skills as a parent in a past life, it kicks in when you become a parent, right? Like if you're, some little girl who plays with a baby doll and she pretends to be its mommy. There's stuff like that. But like until you're really a parent, these things emerge. You have these samskaras that are waiting to emerge. And that's why people with power and money who may be good people, people who didn't have power and money, who aspired to be politicians or CEOs, and they become famous and rich and powerful. And then these samskaras that they didn't know were there come out. And they have these proclivities to deviance, right? And she's trying to say that you can use your will force to overcome these things. And you can't. I mean, you can to a certain extent. Like you could, if you have an alcohol addiction, you can work your whole life to get rid of it. Like if you're truly motivated, but almost nobody does. And that's only one thing. You have all these other things inside of you that, on your path, on your spiritual path, they're going to come up. That's why saints fall. Spiritual people fall, right? And so, it's not there's no will force here. She's talking about how you have to overcome these things and get rid of the devil having a hold on you. And it's a very immature and primitive way to understand the spiritual aspect of it. And there has to be a cleaning. There has to be a spiritual cleaning that happens. It has to be cleaned out of your etheric system. Like that's, where these things are buried. Like so you'll go through your whole life and there'll be things that you have established in past lives. Sometimes they're talents, sometimes they're abilities, sometimes they're knowledge-based. And they don't emerge till the right time for them to flower, right? The right time for them to, like we have goldenrod. Like I show you guys pictures of my field of goldenrod. And goldenrod doesn't bloom till like fucking late August, September. It doesn't even start growing till, August. And so like it's just sitting there all summer. You see these summer crops, right? The seeds are there. And why don't they bloom in the spring? But at the end of the season, they just come out and they're just there. Things have their own time released, whatever it is. And they're looking for the right conditions. And so.
And you can be good looking and you can have favor, but if you've got one area that the devil's got you, you won't be able to move into the fullness of the anointing. And
again, the anointing is something silly, right? Some physical thing that has no, they make big deals about things that have no value.
until you get salted, you won't be able to have that anointing released because you'll be too sensitive to go in the gutter to get the glory of God. But God said he's raising up some people that aren't so sensitive, that aren't so weak, that aren't so sissy. Oh my goodness, I wish.
Oh my goodness. She's going to do something here.
I could preach it like I was. That if they got to, don't you let this dress fool you. Don't you let these nails fool you. Baby, if I got to get down and crawl.
Okay, 40 years of ministry. They're putting this out there, right? Don't let those nails and dress fool you. Then why are you wearing them? Like, why don't you dress more simple? But anyways, everything on a spiritual level happens internally. It happens inside of you. And you know, you can't, other people can't experience what has happened inside of you. Like they can see the results. They can see that there's, you have something going on consciously. You have, more knowledge base or your condition. Like I was talking about in The Bride of Chucky, comparing him to the Bride of Chucky, comparing the doll to Erica Kirk. And, she's got those cold, dead eyes. And, you can see spirituality in somebody's eyes. You can see somebody who has a connection to God. Like there's a, then there's a, knowledge base. But the character of the person or their personality might, convince you otherwise. Like, their personality doesn't seem like they're spiritual people because, they're not displaying it to you, right? People who are spiritual, it's a very sacred thing, and it gets cheapened when you try to tell people about it. Like your experiences are your experiences, and if somebody else is going through something similar, then you could share it. Like you're like, yeah, this is what I went through this, right? But other than that, like it doesn't matter whether it's like this thing, the magic eye, one of those holograms. You're looking at it until you see it. It's kind of like, am I getting punked, right? Like, like you have to relax your eyes so you can see the hologram. It's a picture within a picture kind of thing. It's like, your experiences are your experiences, and that's everything happens internally. And, the Sizemore system, the second master Babaji, there's these regions. There's 13 spiritual points, and there's 3 regions, the heart region, the mind region, and the central region. And, you could be moved through these spiritual points and not experience very much, or you can have bigger experiences. But he would go to Europe, and specifically Denmark. He put 6 people in the mind region. And there are people, who are like, oh, Babaji just put me in point 7. And other people are like, oh, yeah, he did that for me 2 months ago. And it was just like, it got goofy. Like people got competitive over it. And, all of them fell. They had issues. One guy was doing LSD. He got in trouble. Like he fucked up his whole spiritual condition because he was in a higher level of consciousness, and he started fucking doing LSD, like stupid shit, right? But your experiences are your experiences, and you really can't talk to other people about them unless they've had them, and whatever they might be, and then it's still not, it's really about you and your spiritual journey. Other people get to feel like where you are in terms of your spiritual approach or your knowledge base, and they can, they see that there's something going on with you that is like not normal, like not, it's not average. There's something special happening for, a person who's on a spiritual journey, and they start to see the spirituality emerge because, people have human personalities, and they have their idiosyncratic behaviors and these other things, right? But all these, rituals and all these other bullshit things, they don't mean anything. Like there's no benefit to the anointing. It's just like they're trying to make something of something, right? Like they're trying to sell you, like you get this, you get this thing, and you're gonna, like it's those black belt programs where every time you get tested, it costs you so much money, and you got to buy the fucking new belt, and it's a gimmick, right? Like you're gonna get your ass kicked, right? Like I'm a black belt, yeah, but like you just got your ass kicked by somebody who has no he doesn't know any kung fu or karate or whatever it is, right? Like so, it's performative. It's just a show. Like what are you? Like what can you do? What's happened to you? What changes are inside of you based in your spiritual approach? All right, let's move on to the next thing here. Okay, so the caption to this is Paula White here. They're at the White House, and the person said, "What kind of worship is this?" It was obviously a Christian. The angels cried holy. They're leaning back and singing to heaven. It's It's holy forever. TikTok's, just weird shit, right? So let me just add a little bit here because nobody thinks about these things, because of my spiritual practice, it's a thing, and there's teachings about it, and there's just things I've thought about myself. But, there's the lower level of emotions. I've talked about this before, right? You have, the intelligence of your gut, where you have your instincts, you have your appetites, you have your lower level emotions that are tied to survival, fear, and anger and lust and these types of things, right? Like the more animalistic side of yourself, your food appetites, your sexual appetites, these things, right? And there's like a nerve center. There's all these nerve endings. It's an intelligence center. People say I'm going with my gut, things like that, right? That's a level of intuition and things to do with your natural animal instincts as a physical being, right? And then you have your brain, which can think, right? And sometimes your brain has to override your animal instincts, your lower level emotions and instincts, right? And then you have your heart, which is tied to your soul. And that's where you feel the deeper feelings of love. Like love is something you feel in your heart. You don't feel love in your gut, right? There's sexual urges in your gut, in your lower nature, and there's chakras, there's all these spiritual points there, and these things that are tied to your, appetites and survival and your animal instincts. And then you move upwards and you have your heart, which is where your seat of your soul is and where you feel compassion and love and more mature things. And sometimes your heart has to override your brain, which will not be able to understand love and not understand faith and things like this, right? So, a human being is made up of these various parts, these various components, right? These various, intelligence centers. And there's, a driving force to it. And when you go to music, the rock concerts, there's music like maybe some classical music. I'm not a big classical music fan, but some of it's just sublime, the stuff I do like. And there's music that appeals to your heart, like it just resonates with your heart. The, natural sounds, there's things that, make you feel things in your heart. And then there's things that make you feel things in your gut and your lower centers, your lower sort of power centers, your heavy metal music, rap music, things with a beat, they're more, tribal and more primal, and they bring out, more of an animalistic type of situation. Music, and then other things, TV shows, there's things that pull on your emotional, strings, like your things that'll make you angry and things that'll make you scared and things that provoke you, right? Horror movies and those types of things. And then there's, deeper level movies that make you feel things in your heart, feel compassion, like it's deeper, like it's a deeper, more mature, more, subtle type of, message, right? And so, and then there's, of course, things that are intellectually stimulating. But the kind of religious stuff that Paula White and, most Christians practice and most religious people practice around the world appeals to people's lower emotions. They don't really, their heart doesn't get involved. There's lots of people who don't feel love. They don't feel, what they think of, what they would call love is something else, right? They don't feel anything deeper in their heart. And, the things that you feel on a deep level in your heart, it's like a sacred thing. You don't brag about, you don't have to flaunt it. You don't have to post it on Facebook, I'm so in love, it's just, it's something, a private matter between you and the other person or between you and God or whatever it might be. Like you don't need validation from bullshit. That's lower level stuff, right? It's lower level, and then your brain has, there's a higher mind and a lower mind and these things, right? There's a super consciousness and there's, levels of consciousness. And, the stuff that Trump needs, people needs thumbs up and need constant reassuring and constant, some kind of social validation and things. It's a very low thing. It's a very immature thing. It's a, childlike thing, an eighth grade, high school thing. And, people don't grow out of that shit and they need that kind of, peer, peer support, peer validation. And, social media thrives on that shit, right? But Paula White and these motherfuckers, they all, they're all doing their thing, that's far away from the higher level of consciousness. they're not connecting with God. They're not connecting with love. They're connecting with, mental anguish and lower level emotions. And they're able to stir things up with, the kind of music and the kind of, like I said, the cadence and the, you get this from politicians and, being around other people, like in a concert type situation. Emotions are magnified, like in a mob or, when you're really watching a great sporting event and you're there live. It's magnified by the people watching it. You're experiencing amazing, an amazing game, a close game where both teams are playing great and they take it to a higher level and it brings the audience with them. You see this in concerts and things. But the deeper level things are internalized. And this, level of bullshit, religion where it's very emotional, very low level, and they appeal to your lower nature, and then they steal your money, right? But they get you going. They get into you. You like a Trump rally, like Trump, brings people up. He's got a way of grifting with people, and the people are there, and the emotions get going, and I mean, there's enthusiasm. Bernie Sanders had an enthusiastic fucking crowd, right? He would get 10, 15,000 people, and he's like just like annoying. I mean, doesn't have the skills that Trump has, and yet he still had this enthusiasm. And so, it's mostly an illusion, and it's very materialistic, it's very physical, and it's very low level. It's low level mentally, low level consciousness, and low level emotions. And so, there's that. Anyways, let's move on to the next thing here. Judeo-Christian, right? I often use this facehugger creature from the alien universe to talk about various things, but this is a good meme here. This was directly below. I just scrolled down for a second, unintentionally, when I closed the Paula White thing, and this was right underneath it. And then this one here. Oh, this one here. Is this mushroom edible? AI, yes. You're right, that mushroom is, now he's talking to his gravestone. You're right, that mushroom was poisonous. I'm sorry for the confusion. Would you like to learn more about poisonous mushrooms? AI is definitely not, especially I think ChatGPT there's just a lot of fails. Okay, so the title of this video is Trump's assassination attempt story has big problems. And this is from the Young Turks. Remember they used to call them the Young Turds. Somebody did, I don't know. Maybe it was Jeff C., the former no longer alive truther. Anyways, the Cenk Agar, the big guy, the main guy for the Young Turks, said this was badass when it happened. Like, he praised Trump, and he hates Trump. He praised him for how badass it was. And it was, only badass for dumb fucks who like wrestling. Because it was ridiculous, right? Mouthing the words fight, 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 so fucking fake. And now everybody's calling it out. The interesting thing about this, and I don't care. I mean, my channel's kind of non-existent. It used to get more views and whatever, but even then, there's a small select group of people capable of, benefiting from my channel, right? And there's stuff that I do mocking and lower level stuff that I can connect with some people, but the stuff that's really important, it's only a small percentage of the population that, could gravitate to it and are interested in it. But in that, I was, I guess, one of the lone voices out there calling bullshit from day one. It was so fucking fake. I remember my wife and I, we heard he got shot. It was like Saturday. And we went for a walk. We came back, and we thought it was some bullshit thing. And then we started watching it. My wife's like, he's bleeding and stuff. And I'm like, oh, this is so fucking fake. She's like, you think so? I'm like, yeah, this is fake. It's all WWE. And I had no idea about all the stuff, right? The WWE stuff. But, I have a playlist, and you can go back, and I've documented all of it. All the stuff they're all talking about now. And, there's an element that people like Candace Owens, for example, they think when they finally come around to something, they just discovered it, one, and two, it's the right time. Like, one of these guys, he's like a, one of those sort of Christians that wear, the women wear head covering, like a guy was in Texas, when I was first becoming a truther. And I listened to something the guy was saying, and he was saying, in terms of like being a conspiracy theorist or being a, like a truther or whatever it was. I don't know what term he used. He said wherever you are is like wherever you are, you think that's where you're with it. Like that's optimal. Like anybody who's more extreme than you is a nut job, and anybody who isn't up to where you are is a sheeple. And it's very weird how people think their position is the right one. All these people who are now calling bullshit on Trump, but when it was really important and it could have changed things, as much as elections are rigged or not, but at least just in terms of people understanding that this wasn't going to be anything they thought it was, because Trump was lying to his people. He wasn't lying to the liberals or the, I guess to some extent independents dumb fuck independents who like this sort of thing. But, he was lying more to his audience than anybody else. Like that convention was for him and his people, and they rolled all that shit out. So he's deceiving the people that support him purposely, right? And, we know for sure that he had he needed no stitches on a cut that his personal doctor said was less than 2 centimeters, which I dealt with I keep on saying that, but people don't listen, right? Less than 2 centimeters, right? And didn't need stitches. So what kind of cut doesn't need stitches? Well, it's a boo-boo, right? Like, and it was not even like a big cut. Like, it was less than 2 centimeters, which means it could be 0, right? Like that doesn't, And so he wore a big bandage for a week and then a smaller bandage for another week. He wore bandages for 13 days and finally took it off because I was waiting to see the non-existent scar. And, I knew it was coming. And so when he came out with that maxi pad, he was deceiving his audience. Like, that's theatrical, right? He didn't need a tampon to put on his, maxi pad to put on his ear when it was just if there was anything there when he came back with Jesse Waters, he had a bandage around the top part of his ear, and it was to cover up that there was nothing there, right? Like, and then I knew that they were going to take it off, and it was going to be nothing, and it was. There's no scar. You saw it on Joe Rogan. And so, people aren't willing to look at, like, why didn't I get this, I don't know, a year and a half ago? Like, why am I so late to the party? No, people think that, this is, I'm with it, right? This is time now. This is the right time. No, it's not the right time. The right time was fucking a year and a half ago.
That day, Thomas Crooks came within a quarter inch of destroying this country. And yet, a year and a half later, we still know almost nothing about him or why he did it. That's because, for some reason, the FBI, even the current FBI, doesn't want us to know.
Maybe the assassination was like not something that we don't know the full story.
This loudmouth motherfucker.
So maybe it was staged. Maybe it was faked. Maybe it was some kind of message to him.
No fucking maybe. It's like 100. Why isn't Trump talking about this every day? Like, the guy's obsessive, and he loves to talk about his accomplishments. People look at that. I mean, he won over the Young Turks. He won over liberals, like the mainstream media. Everyone thought it was badass, right? And that was his big moment, and he doesn't talk about it? Why the fuck not? Because it's fake. Why isn't he investigating it? Because it's fake. Why isn't he being a victim about it? Because it's fake. He never talks about it. People ask him about it. He just brushes them off. He doesn't want to talk about it. He likes to talk about every fucking thing else. And this is specifically something that made him look good. He doesn't want to talk about it. Because of course he doesn't. Because it's fake as fuck. And he knows that, now that everyone's turning on him, it's the first thing that could go. Because it's like, once you start looking into it, it's fucked.
Although I don't understand that.
Now, it's been months since Tucker Carlson did a deep dive into President Donald Trump's would-be assassin, Thomas Crooks, and the FBI's lack of interest in, investigating it, including the motive. Now, more conservatives are beginning to question what exactly happened in Butler, Pennsylvania during the 20...
Again, late to the party motherfuckers. And, no acknowledgement of it, right? Like, why didn't we see this? Wow, I feel like a dumb fuck, right? Like this kind of thing. Okay, so this was some local news. I don't know where out of. Once in a while, a local news station will be recommended by YouTube. And this woman says this to start off with.
The ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran is just a day away from expiring, and today President J.D. Vance is headed to Pakistan for
What? What, J.D. Vance?
and today President J.D. Vance is headed to
President J.D. Vance. And then it goes here with Trump talking shit somewhere over here.
The president adds if no long-term deal is reached, he is not interested in extending the ceasefire. The president adds if no long-term deal is reached by tomorrow, quote, lots of bombs start going off. Iran, with threats of its own, says it's prepared to reveal new cards on the battlefield. And overnight, the U.S. military...
Oh, there's an audio here. Here it is.
President telling CNBC this.
Well, I expect to be bombing because I think that's a better attitude to go in with, but...
It's always good to go in with an attitude, I expect to be bombing. Like that's, again, no missiles. Bombing, right? Like they don't have the...
We're ready to go. I mean, the military is raring to go.
President Trump is trying to up the pressure, insisting he is not interested in extending the ceasefire. The president adds if no long-term deal is reached by tomorrow, quote, lots of bombs start going off.
Okay, we saw that. All right, this was before he caved. So this was, good that I kept this up. I kept it up just for the J.D. Vance, President J.D. Vance thing. Like, what the fuck, right? J.D. Vance. Anyways... like he goes back and forth. Like you can't negotiate with someone like this. He's lost his mind. He's impulsive and he's just like, he's emotional and he's incapable of remembering what he said. And he's like lying and, he's lying both fucking ways. He contradicts himself and both things are lies, right? He's like, usually only one thing's a lie when they contradict themselves, but not him. Everything's a lie. So I just saw a trailer for Wile E. Coyote versus Acme. And it's a mixture of cartoon and live action where Wile E. Coyote is suing Acme. It's about time. So the caption to this was J.D. Vance's trip to Pakistan. J.D. Vance's trip to Pakistan. Goes up. What? No. Back and whoa and back and holy shit. Right? That was wonderful. In Iran, pedophiles are hanged. In Cuba, they are imprisoned for 30 years. In North Korea, they are given the death penalty. But in the United States, they become president. Kaboom. Fucking boom. Kablowy. Kablamo. So some are Coralville in Iowa. They have a Coral. Is that Iowa? AI? Yeah, I think so.
I don't want to say he's perfect. The only perfect person that ever walked this earth was Jesus.
But Jesus was so perfect. Jesus was so perfect, but Trump is close. Trump is close to Jesus.
But he was wonderful in office for 4 years, and he proved that. So what is it about Trump that you love so much?
Number one, he's a godly man. He's working for God, for darn sure.
Yeah, not the way you think. I agree. But he's working for God to be a fuck up and to destroy the system, like the system that's demonic, right? So that's like, first of all, well, like you're almost there.
Number two, he really cares about us. He cares about us. He cares about what happens to us. He cares about our country.
That's funny, the way she looked. He does not care about any of those things. He cares about himself, and that's about it, right? Anything else is a distant second.
He didn't come in there because he wanted the money. He's got money. He is coming there because he is actually working for God, and he wants to help us, and he wants to get us to he wants to make America great again, and I it's true, but I think he's going to make it even greater, because I don't think, no matter what they try to do to stop him, he's going to come back, because he's working for God, and God's on his side.
God's on his side as long as he keeps on fucking up the world, right? If he starts being competent and caring about people, then God's going to have to pull the plug on him. So Donald Trump participated in reading the Bible celebration of 250 years of the Bible being in America. And
thus Solomon finished the house of the Lord and the king's house, and all that came into Solomon's heart to make in the house of the Lord, and in his own house he prosperously effected.
He's doing a horrible job. And the Bible's hard to read. And Trump has no idea what he's talking about. It's obviously Old Testament bullshit, right?
And the Lord appeared to Solomon by night and said to him, I have heard your prayer and have chosen this place to myself for a house of sacrifice. If I shut up heaven, that there be no rain, or if I command the locusts to devour the land, or if I send pestilence among my people, if my people which are called...
What a prick God is, right? What a fucking prick. Just threaten like Trump is, like threaten the way Trump is threatening Iran to decivilizationise it, right? That fucking Easter Day post. This is the kind of God that people fucking worship in the Old Testament. Fish boy, got him in his fish boy.
Called by my name shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways. Then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. Now my eyes shall be open and my ears attent to the prayer that is made in this place. For now I have chosen and sanctified this house, that my name may be there forever, and my eyes and my heart shall be there perpetually.
He's not so bad at this.
And as for you, if you will walk before me, as David your father walked, and do according to all that I have commanded you, and shall observe my statutes and my judgments, then will I establish the throne of my kingdom according to as I have covenanted with David your father, saying, there shall not fail you as a man to be ruler in Israel. But if you turn away and forsake my statutes and my commandments, which I have set before you, and
What's he going to do? I bet it's going to be pretty fucking harsh.
shall go and serve other gods and worship them, then will I pluck them up from the roots out of my land which I have given them, and this house which I have sanctified for my name will I cast out of my sight, and will make it to be a proverb and a byword among nations. And this house which is high shall be an astonishment to every one that passes by it, so that he shall say, why has the Lord done thus to this land and to this house? And it shall be answered, because they forsook the Lord God of their fathers, which brought them forth out of the land of Egypt, and
There's a lot of forsooking. Why did they forsook?
laid hold on other gods and worship them and serve them. Therefore has he brought all this evil upon them.
So, wow, that's cheery. Of course, that's the kind of quote Donald Trump would fucking gravitate to. Okay, so, I got a bunch of stuff to cover today. I've already made the clips. I was about to, edit this video and get it up. And, I received a message on Facebook or, Instagram. Let me see. Let's find the thing here. Where a person says, I certainly don't want to get banned regarding your video with Tucker and his brother. Isn't it better being late to the show rather than not ever getting there? Your thoughts. Whenever you start off something, I don't want to get banned, that's telling me you want to get banned, right? Because you're violating my basic rules. And people just can't help themselves, right? This is a regular commenter. But, just for me to clear this up, I mean, I usually don't read messages and these things. Just for me to clear this up, and also commenting on a message as opposed to a comment, right? I used to think this way, that when Tucker Carlson and these famous people, not just Tucker, anybody, would start agreeing with people in the truth community, all of us, it was a win. And I was like, I'm not going to criticize these people. It started with Kyrie Irving, which is a little bit different. Kyrie Irving created Illuminati-type sneakers with the eye of the capstone of the pyramid on his sneakers, Illuminati stuff. And, he talked about flat earth and truther stuff, but in a way that wasn't really helpful. But when he refused to get the vaccine, I said, I'll never criticize him. The same thing with Kanye, because Kanye was just so entertaining. Kanye kind of lost his shit. But I thought, as long as people don't have to agree with me or you or whatever, as long as they're being sincere or they're talking about things that are, a little bit better than just, being an NPC and regurgitating bullshit talking points, being a real human, and even Donald Trump to a certain extent. But I realized that was, and Kyrie Irving and Kanye are a little bit different. Like I still, what Kyrie Irving did was like great, regardless if he was playing a role or not, right? At least he was playing a good role when he refused to get the vaccine, and he just wouldn't back down. It was amazing. It was great. But in terms of the rest of this stuff, like with Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and, Donald Trump even worse when he did it, and then all the other people that flirt with the truth community, it's not coming from a sincere place, right? I mean, Tucker Carlson's the best one. He appears sincere, and maybe he is. You can't fake things. You have to buy into a role. The problem is that they use it to push other disinformation, right? They use telling you the truth or flirting with the truth to push their bullshit agenda and to legitimize themselves, right? Because the real way to come out is say, oh, I've got fucking shit for brains. I actually say this about a Trumper later on here. I was a complete fool and an idiot for believing in Ketchupgate. And really, we should look into people who called it out before and celebrate them because they must know a lot more than us, right? Because, when you come around, like when Tucker Carlson came around to 9/11, I said, at least he's taken a step. Because there was this video where he was saying that people were pushing 9/11 conspiracy theory should be locked up. Come on. He was like, come on, right? This kind of thing. And so it was good to see somebody evolve in their point of view. But if they take this new truth, but they use it to push more of their bullshit narrative and more to hook their audience and more to do it in a way to say, hey, look at how great I am and look at like I'm saying. Like this is why I call them late to the party motherfuckers because, they didn't call it out when they should have. And it would have hurt them politically. It would have hurt their viewership. All these people when Trump was popular and they didn't say shit. So that means that they're not sincere. And so they're, all as they can do is damage. And I don't give a shit. It's not like this is a popularity contest that how many people believe that Trump's assassination attempt was fake. Nothing's going to come of it. Like even if, all the people in America believe it, it's not going to be investigated because most people understand that Trump is Epstein and that's not being, there's no accountability. There never has been, in terms of, occasionally somebody gets fired or, somebody like look at Ghislaine Maxwell. She clearly was as guilty, even more guilty. Many of the girls said that she was more evil than Jeffrey Epstein, felt more betrayed by her. And yet she's fucking getting premier treatment. She's getting more and more, privileges because she's not ratting out Trump, and they're all getting away with it. They get away with it all the time. It's just the way the system's rigged. And so more and more people talking about Ketchupgate doesn't matter, right? It's just doing it when you know what happened. Calling it out or just saying, I don't think this thing might not be true, right? Somebody just sent me something to do with the Iran war. And I don't know if I'll show it in my next video, but some guy saying, how is Israel able to do anything with the amount of missiles that Iran has allegedly hit Israel with? Because the amount of missiles that have hit Israel or would have hit Israel from what they're saying Iran launched, Israel wouldn't be able to do shit. Like they would be devastated. It's a small country, a small city, and the missiles would have basically obliterated everything in Israel. And yet, they're able to conduct all kinds of operations against Iran and Lebanon. So, I always talk about how we don't know anything is real anymore because we can't trust the news. So, like me talking about this stuff, I do it in an entertaining way, and it's going to happen, and I believe that civilization it'll be a good thing. It's definitely going to be a good thing when it goes down, right? Not that I want it to happen personally, egotistically, but I know it's a good thing, right? And so I don't give a shit. None of this stuff matters. And it's pointless. And people want to listen to this show because it's entertaining, but it doesn't have any value other than spirituality stuff. And most people won't even try that. So, it's just a fucking loss. We're waiting for something big to happen for people to finally break free from their addictions and their fucking egotistical pursuits And maybe they will and maybe they won't. And that's about, there'll be a judgment day for that. Like a judgment day is you're given an opportunity to go up or down. And if you don't go up, then like human beings that exist now won't exist anymore. Like our species is being evaluated, and there is a choice point coming up, post-apocalyptic choice point. And when that choice point happens, there'll be a decision made, and it won't be the majority of people. The majority of people won't be here. Their souls won't be here because there'll be massive depopulation, and the people that can, the people who have the ability, because lots of people can't make that choice. They can't connect to the divinity within them. They can't take a choice to follow their souls. They just don't have the capacity. But the people that do have the capacity but just won't, there'll be a choice, and that's what we're waiting for. Like it'll happen, in the next 100 years or so, whatever it is, maybe sooner, probably sooner than later. And like I said over and over again, the evidence right now is that people will choose the lower because that's what people always do. And if we do that collectively, it'll be the end of our species. Like there's just, it's a failed experiment, right? And so there's that, and we will see what happens. And you're going to find that they're higher developed souls. I mean, maybe you're not going to find that, but that's what's going to happen. People are going to be born different with different, there'll be things that are triggered by, there'll be some advantages there. There'll be some stuff that's not available to people now that'll be in people. Like there'll be an evolutionary genetic mutation where people will have a tendency to choose the higher. And, that's coming, and that'll be part of it, right? Like, the worthless people that we are now, we're like the Cro-Magnon man or the Neanderthal, and there'll be something more evolved, something better, people who are, have capacities that the majority of people don't have right now. And those people will hopefully run with it, and when that happens, that happens. Other than that, there's nothing here. It's all just, it's just shit flying by you. Whether it's scandals, it's, whatever these things I covered, nothing matters. There's no accountability on a material level because the material system is completely demonic. And, who's going to demons aren't going to hold depravity accountable, right? And so none of this stuff matters in terms of the system. But eventually the divine system holds everybody accountable. And those things will kick in, and, so all this stuff doesn't matter. But the people that are out there trying to, pretend that they're part of it, and they're not, right? They're just not. They are controllers in truth or clothing. And so, that's why I think they're worse than because they're not sincere, they're not authentic. Anyways, let's get into the other stuff here. Also, I want to add something to this. This idea that somebody would write and say, I don't want to get banned, but, because they know they're violating a rule, right? And the rules of no criticism here, and I don't have a complaint department, they exist for me particularly because I don't want to hear your shit, right? I don't, whatever. It's whatever it is. The stuff doesn't mean anything to me, so I don't need, it's not important to me, like I just said. And the beliefs, beliefs are just beliefs. Everyone's got opinions, right? Everyone's got an opinion, but opinions don't really mean shit. Your opinion about things, it's only the divine truth that matters, right? Everybody's deviant opinion doesn't mean shit, right? So there's that. But the thing for everybody else would be this. I don't expect people to agree with everything I say. And, I get these comments, well, I don't agree with everything you say. Who the fuck would want that? Do you think I want you to agree with everything I say? I'm not saying these things because I want you to all believe everything I say and incorporate them. I'm not making suggestions. I'm not creating a dogma. I'm just saying what I see here, what I think the truth is, what I believe the truth to be. And, some of it's humorous, and there's a, overall point about divinity within you, but that's something separate. But, I don't expect people to agree with everything I say because I don't agree with everything I say. Who does? We change our opinions about things sometimes drastically. 2023 Paul wouldn't agree with 2026 Paul, right? On certain things. So you can see it in the videos. It's all of it. So, when people aren't thinking for themselves, if I say something and you don't agree with it, then maybe figure out why I'm saying it. You know, like see if there's something else you're missing, right? Like you can figure these things out for yourself. You don't have to bother me with them, right? Like there should be some level of, it's just understanding the way I think. If you listen to me enough and like incorporating that inside of you, like I've incorporated people, Master Chargy and my brother and, my, whatever it is, family members or different things. And you take little pieces of people and they become part of who you are in the inside of you. And, the way that people see things and coaches and teachers and people who have value, your lens becomes part of it, right? Like if it's for you to figure out, like, these are like enigmas in some way. Like it's, something that's new to you or something you don't understand or believe. Either I'm wrong or I'm right. And if I'm right, then why do I have to explain why I'm right? Why do I have to explain it to you? Like, why do I have to tell people certain things, right? Somebody wrote me a comment similar to this where they were saying, I must have it wrong because a 2 centimeter cut is quite big, right? And so it must be millimeters. And I said, no, I keep on saying he said less than 2 centimeters. And what does less than 2 centimeters mean, right? You're not listening. Like you're not, I said it over and over again. You can look at go find the report, and that's, he said less than 2 centimeters. I looked up, I couldn't find the original statement. People they're saying 2 centimeters, but they're just repeating that, paraphrasing what he said. So, I could go back in my videos and look at it. Maybe they've changed it. I don't know. But either way, it was less than 2 centimeters, which could mean anything. And of course, he wasn't shot at all, right? The point is that, it's for people to figure out whether what I'm saying is accurate or not. Like people can fact check it if that's what they want to do, or they, but I'm not saying that I have facts, not in the, way that people talk about facts. I'm talking about, being able to see through all the bullshit and saying what I see, right? And, so whether I'm right or wrong is, or some details here or there, you can never get everything 100% right when it's blurred with so much bullshit, but just the general sense of the thing, right? Like there's going to be some mistakes and some little, details, like I said, but in terms of the overall sense of it is, what I'm saying more accurate, that's for people to figure out for themselves, right? Like if you're seeking the truth, then that'll help you find the truth, right? When you listen to somebody talk about what they see, what they believe, what they, experience or whatever it is, and then you got to figure out what that means for yourself, right? It's like important that you have some participation in this, that you're actively, not just listening to somebody else and regurgitating. You hear me talk about that all the time, and I'm going to slam some person doing that with TDS, right? Where you just take talking points that other people put out, organizations and people, and things that are said on the news or whatever, and you just regurgitate them. And people in the truth community should not be doing that. Just regurgitating what other people say. This is the big problem with the flat earthers. None of the flat earthers could talk about the model. Only the people who are making videos. And they would refer you because they didn't understand what the fuck the guys were talking about, right? They didn't understand the model because there is none. Right? It's just all bullshit. And so you should be able to, figure things out and have a sense of it for yourself, right? That's, these things are just, ways for you to kind of frame the way that you look at it. Like to help adjust your lens that's been distorted by the system and by indoctrination and the beast. And so just repeating shit other people say, or just thinking that, you need somebody else to do your thinking for you. Well, what value do you have? Like what value does anybody have that is just waiting for other people to tell them what's up? And, so some people are going to be smarter than you or know more about a certain subject than you, but you can still be able to figure things out for yourself, at least in terms of your own decision making. But I don't expect anybody just to lap up what I say and replace what they think with what I think. Like who wants that responsibility? Like I certainly don't. Anyways, let's get into the other stuff here. Okay, it's Thursday, April 23rd. This video should go up tonight if I can remember to. It's out of I usually get the videos done a day ahead of time, but the night one makes sense. Just leave it open till, God knows what's going to happen, right? It's like today, they're talking about Spirit Airlines being owned by Trump. He's socializing. I mean, this capitalist is, there's all these things going on that's like socialization of, these private companies. And there was something I watched last night. I was going through the news channels, and there's someone, I think, on MSNBC talking about how Trump has said there's no timetable for the negotiations with Iran to end. Like, you have to put limitations. The guy who was about to destroy their civilization, there's rumors that he was trying to get the nuclear codes and someone wouldn't let him have them, right? Like that kind of shit. And he was, talking about bombing bridges and infrastructure and basically starving out and, killing civilian children and civilians and shit like that. And now there's no timetable. And they were saying Iran was shooting at ships in the Strait of Hormuz at the same time as he's like, saying these things. So he's lost his, they're just not respecting him. So then my phone this morning, and I got a bunch of other kind of big stories to get to that I am going to cover. There's stories that could be the focus point of every video I don't even cover every day because of how fucked up everything is. But this one, this was recommended by Fox News on my, sometimes they do these things that aren't videos on you. This is from YouTube on my phone. Very good news. I've just been informed that 8 protesters who are going to be executed tonight in Iran no longer will be killed. 4 will be released immediately and 4 will be sentenced to 1 month in prison. I very much appreciate that Iran and its leaders respected my request as President of the United States and terminated the planned execution. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. Let me show you the women before we comment on this. I'm sorry, these are the 8 women, right? It says, Trump says 8 Iranian women protesters slated for execution will no longer be killed. Now, these 8 they look like AI generated headshots, right? Like these women have headshots that they put out, like models, like all maybe this one, maybe that one is, but I mean again, all looks like it's AI generated imagery, right? This is the Iranian women, no head coverings, no anything like this, no, just out there with no social media. This is the pictures they got of them, right? I mean, they look totally AI generated. This is how desperate Trump is for a fucking win, right? Like he's, he's making it sound like this is some kind of victory, that they're listening to him. He requested that these women be spared, their lives be spared. He's such a saintly, fucking wonderful human being. And they listen to him because they're listening to him over there. They respect his wishes. They respect him. They're not making Lego video after Lego video. They're not just fucking punking him in the Strait of Hormuz every chance they get. Listen, he's saving these Instagram models. These AI-generated Instagram models and their headshots. Send over their AI headshots, right? I mean, just silly. It's gotten fucking, it's a clown show, right? And so, I watched the beginning of Morning Joe, see if there's any big story, because I have it taped on YouTube TV. CNN keeps on changing their morning show. It's changed it like 10 times. And they can't compete with Morning Joe. That's how bad things are at CNN. And they led with Jimmy Fallon making jokes about this Spirit Airline thing. And it said, we know Trump owns Spirit Airline because he won't release the passenger list to some private island. He's punking him on Jeffrey Epstein, like Jimmy Fallon's punking him. That, no talent lightweight, as Trump would call him. That he's getting punked by Jimmy Fallon, who wouldn't say shit about Trump in the beginning because they were like friends, and Jimmy Fallon doesn't like to be, he likes to be all happy-go-lucky and, So this is how bad things are right now. Let's go to Fetterman here. Fetterman, in the face of consistent attacks, past and present, our special ally and its people have shown true strength and resilience. Israel, I'm proud to stand on the right side of history, and this voice and vote will never waver. Happy Independence Day. Way to go, Fettermans. You're just the best. You're fucking brain dead motherfucker, right? I don't know where I got this. Maybe it was on Facebook. I'm not sure. But somewhere this showed up. And, look at them. They got them. Look at it. So this popped last night.
Blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. Tonight, as the U.S. Navy is conducting a blockade in the Strait of Hormuz in a war Donald Trump started, MS Now reports the head of the Navy has been fired. Phelan removal was driven by his poor relationship with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and other senior Pentagon officials, a person familiar with the matter said. Earlier today, the Pentagon released a statement announcing that Phelan is, quote, departing the administration effective immediately. They gave virtually no explanation.
On behalf of the Secretary of War and Deputy Secretary of War, we are grateful to Secretary Phelan to his service to the Department of the United States Navy. We wish him well in his future endeavors. Undersecretary Hung Kao will become acting Secretary of the Navy. Way to go, Hung. Hung's the man. So, okay. I don't know how to pronounce this guy's last name because it could be anything. So he's just firing military brass, which is bad. Like people who are, I mean, they have to be better than what Hegseth and his people, the people he's putting in there, the people that are there. They could suck. They could be just horrible people, horrible military people, but they're got to be better than Hegseth is bringing in. And, there's pushback. If they're firing, it's because there's pushback to some of the dumb shit they're doing. Like some of the self-destructive and, horrible shit. So this could be a major story. Like I could have led with this. I could put this in the beginning of the video. Because, they're just purging military leadership at a time where we're in a debacle of a fucking war, right? Getting rid of any maybe adult in the room. I mean, some of the people have to be, people who are trying to stand up to them. Because, the worst thing you can do to Trump is tell him no and, and not kiss his ass, right? That's how that's how you get fired with Trump, not kissing his ass. Okay, here we go.
There is brand new reporting from the New York Times that has broken since we've been on the air on how the FBI pursued an investigation into a New York Times reporter who reported on and wrote a story about the girlfriend of FBI Director Kash Patel. A person briefed on the matter telling the New York Times that, quote, agents interviewed the girlfriend, queried databases for information on the reporter, Elizabeth Williamson, and recommended moving forward to determine whether Ms. Williamson broke federal stalking laws.
Okay, so this little bitch here, right? This guy is a little, I mean, they've got a lot of, like, fake tough guys who want to be tough guys, but they're pussies, and this guy's, like, the epitome of that. Like, they're all acting tough and, like, all this stuff. But this guy was a nerd. Like, he's, like, 5'4", a nerd who became a lawyer and worked as like a public defender in Miami or somewhere in Florida, like city, I think it was Miami, for, like, criminals. Like, he was, or people who were accused of crimes. I mean, I'm sure he had some innocent cases, but the majority of it is people who are, guilty of something, and he's defending them. Then somehow he weaseled his way into the FBI as a lawyer for the FBI. Like, he wasn't a field agent. He wasn't, doing any of this stuff. He was a lawyer, and which I'm sure the majority of people at the FBI don't respect their lawyers. Like, there's, it's like the human service department kind of stuff, right? Human resource, HR, that kind of stuff. Like, it's just not. But somehow, because he said things favorably about Trump and he had a fairly successful podcast for, dumb fucks, Trump tapped him to be this guy who he didn't, he doesn't deserve this post. He's an alcoholic. He's got some, honeypot girlfriend that's a country singer, and they're gallivanting around on private jets on the American taxpayers, dime, and, was investigated. And this is what Trump does when anybody investigates him. They investigate them. They turn the tables, right? They go on the attack. And so this is how fucked, right? This is another huge story. It's just going to be, all right, that just happened. Like, they're investigating journalists who are investigating their corruption, right? And this weird fuck, and, like, paranoid, weak, him getting drunk with the fucking hockey team and trying to be one of those guys and all that shit, because he's in this position. So it's really bad. Like, it's embarrassing. He's an embarrassment. But, like, is he the worst embarrassment? I mean, certainly that probably goes to Kristi Noem. But Pam Bondi was pretty fucking bad. Pete Hegseth, we'll show you a video clip of him. It's also the WWE. I got a basketball clip to play about that. It's the WWE of this thing. We'll get to the basketball clip last, and I'll I'll segue into a voiceover there.
To the KH leadership and IRGC leadership, we're watching you.
We're watching you. He's talking to the Iranians.
Our capabilities are not the same, our military and yours. Remember, this is not a fair fight.
Then why are you guys struggling, right? It isn't a fair fight. They have the 21st best military. You have the first. And there's quite a gap, right? Like, 20th first is, not, but America had a much better military than the Vietnamese and a much better military than the Iraqis. But the military isn't trained to do insurgent warfare, which is what the Strait of Hormuz is. Like Trump said, one guy with a pickup truck and some mines or some drones or something can close down the Strait of Hormuz. And so you're going to get into a situation where so-called terrorists are going to be able to take down the economy, right? Like a David versus Goliath type of thing, which is not really, because that's all bullshit. But, like something where, you're overmatched because you're trying to use a bulldozer to pick up a pin, right? The military isn't trained for policing and doing these things. And they have control over something that's easy to control, which is the Strait of Hormuz with modern day technology. Also hackers. You're going to be able to, people are going to be able to, individuals take down governments with hacking, right? This kind of shit, when you rely on electronics and AI and all that shit, right? And so, like this fucking clown, like what an absolute clown. You're getting your ass kicked. Like, you're trying to, you're talking shit to them and they're just like laughing at you, making Lego videos of you. They're talking about these two guys being the drunks. I forget, there was a meme, I meant to grab it. An administrative meme about this.
And we know what military assets you are moving and where you are moving them to. While you are digging out, which is exactly what you're doing, digging out of bombed out and devastated facilities, we are only getting stronger. You are digging out your remaining launchers and missiles with no ability to replace them. You have no defense industry, no ability to replenish your offensive or defensive capabilities. You only have what you have.
So he's not really talking to them. He's talking to Fox News viewers and people like that, who, people that don't think he's a clown. Because, they're not backing down. So they have something. They have leverage. Like, he wouldn't be talking about this shit if they didn't have leverage. You just do it, right? Like, you just go and do it. Like, they're making it sound like you better fucking negotiate with us because they're not negotiating, right? Well, why aren't they negotiating? Are they suicidal? Or do they got you by the fucking balls? Are they Hormuzing you, right? And do they know that Netanyahu's not going to allow you guys to make a deal anyway, right? Like that kind of thing. Like, what do they know that you're not saying, right?
You know that, and we know that. You can move things around, but you can't actually rebuild. You can dig out for now, but you can't reconstitute. But we can. We are reloading with more power than ever before, and better intelligence. Even more importantly, better intelligence than ever.
We know that there's a guy who was on Tucker Carlson that he has, what he does. He's a military expert, like on weaponry and all these things. And he says we're out of Tomahawk missiles. Like our military industrial complex is broken. We can't replenish them, and we have our nuclear weapons, but we don't have, these mid-range Tomahawk and some of these other missiles. That's why they're using bombers. And they say, they have air support superiority, and there's that. But the Iranians still can close the Strait of Hormuz. In all that, no matter what you're saying here, they can do it. Then they're going to have these things, and they're going to get support from Russia and China. So this is already like a proxy war, and just depleted. Like we've seen this before. How many countries, like all these countries that were broken, like the Alexander the Great was broken in the mountains and the foothills of Afghanistan. And the Russians, their government was taken down when they, Afghanistan has broken so many militaries, because they just have to survive and they're just fighty over there. Like they don't care if they kill more people or they lose battles, they just don't give up, right? You ever see that movie, The Lone Survivor? Like the people there, they're all armed and they're like tough and whatever. And so, a small invasion can take down an empire. It's happened over and over again, where empires go against a smaller country that they easily should be able to defeat, and they can't. and they bleed their treasure and their people and their goodwill, and they've lost the fighting edge at home. The citizenry is sick of fucking wars and endless wars and supplying their children to be killed for rich people, and they start being aware of that. This happened in Europe, all these European countries, and they don't want to fight anymore. That's why there's NATO, because they want America to fight European wars. The Europeans were just sick of war, like all these various warlike countries, the Vikings and the fucking and all that shit, the British Commonwealth and all that bullshit, and they just got tired of it. Like they mature out of it. They're like, we stop with the fucking wars already, right? And so they had America. They said, "Oh, you guys can be the world reserve currency, but we want you to fight our wars for us." This guy.
Ever before, as you expose yourself with your movement to our watchful eye. We are locked and loaded on your critical dual-use infrastructure.
What would happen if this guy couldn't talk in bumper stickers? Like, this guy, if he couldn't talk in bumper stickers and at least rah-rah, pre-game speeches, like, what would happen to him?
On your remaining power generation.
Like, he wouldn't be able to communicate.
And on your energy industry. We'd rather not have to do it, but we're ready to go at the command of our president. And
you mean commit war crimes? Is that what you're saying? Like, if you weren't desperate, you wouldn't be threatening war crimes. Things that the world is going to say, why the fuck are you doing that, right? I mean, the world knows this was the other countries know that this is, an Israeli war. You're already talking shit to NATO, and Israel is puppeting the president and America, which is, I mean, they're talking like we got, they're talking like, maybe it's better for us to have a deal with China. They're more reasonable and rational. Maybe we should work with Russia or China instead of America. Like that kind of thing. Like, you're hemorrhaging goodwill across the globe. And so, I mean, you're destroying stuff that was built over time. And, this is things villains talk about. Like, villains threaten taking out critical infrastructure that's for civilians. In a country where he says, I'm trying to save these 8 women from being killed by the government, but we're going to kill millions of people by taking down the critical infrastructure and the suffering. You think about like all the dead people in Gaza and all the dead children, but the ones that are alive, that's not life. They have no place to live. Their buildings have been demolished. There's nothing there. And they're breathing in toxic rubble and, all that shit that happened in Fallujah when America dropped depleted uranium and white phosphorus or whatever it's called. It's stuff it's war crimes. Depleted uranium is, the stuff that's left over from nuclear power plants that has a half-life of like 2 billion years or some shit, 4 billion years. Like, it's crazy. Like, it's radioactive forever. And they dropped it, and there was all these kids with birth defects. Like, all the suffering that happens afterwards, and just all of it. It's inhuman. It's demonic, right? These motherfuckers. So, it's just horrible. It's horrible people. Also, I'm editing, and I just want to add this. One of the things Trump always says is, why am I going to divulge my plans to you? Like, he said he could stop ISIS when he was running in 2016, and they said, how? He goes, I'm not going to tell you because, it'd be stupid. And then he went out and he was asking a general how they got that pilot out of there. The general says, I don't want to say, right? And Trump laughed and, all this stuff. He's from Central Casting, remember that thing. But, they constantly are bragging and saying things. Why would Pete Hegseth tell them that he can see them moving their weapons and all these other things, right? Like, for one, it makes you look like a fool. I remember my dad going into a auto mechanic shop. My dad was kind of a putz. And he goes, I know you guys are going to try to screw me over, so I'm watching you. Like, immediately that means they're like, oh, this guy's a no. Like, we can screw. And you're creating a hostile relationship where they're like, oh, yeah, I want to overcharge you now. Fuck, right? It's just stupid. But in Pete Hegseth's case, he's giving away information. Yeah, we see you moving your stuff. Why would you say that, right? There's a really bad scene. I'm going to talk about how the Paradise show just went south. But there's a psychologist, a woman psychologist, and she's up against some girl badass who's a hit person, hitman. And she realized she's got information that the girl is killing all these people. And then she doesn't have any support, any backup. She's out with the leadership, the psychologist. And she goes and confronts the girl and goes, I know everything you're up to. Why would you say that, right? When the girl's capable of killing you, and it's just stupid. And the resolution of the thing was really stupid. But like, you don't divulge information when you're in a situation where it's adversarial, you don't tell the other side what you're doing, right? Especially in a military situation. You don't tell them what you know or don't know. We see what you guys are doing there and don't think you're going to get away with us, pull a fast one on us, right? It just makes you look pathetic, and it goes against, you don't want them to understand your capabilities, right? You want them to, it's just silly. Okay, so when I was in the chiropractor, I saw this, and I took a screenshot of it. I forgot to do it earlier, but it makes sense to do it now. I've always been a big fan of Tim Cook and likewise Steve Jobs. But if Steve Jobs was not taken from the planet so young and ran the company instead of Tim, the company would have done well, but nowhere as well as it's done under Tim. For me, it began with a phone call from Tim at the beginning of my first term. He had a fairly large problem that only I, as president, could fix. Most people would have paid millions of dollars to a consultant who I probably would not have known, but who would say that he knew me well. The fees would have been paid, but the job would not have gotten done. When I got a call and I said, wow, it's Tim Apple Cook calling, how big is that? I was very impressed with myself to have the head of Apple calling to kiss my ass. Right? Now he's done this twice where he talked about the Saudi prince kissing his ass, and now Tim Cook. Like, he wants people to kiss his ass. Like, and he was impressed with himself that he got Tim Cook to kiss his ass, which sucks for Apple and sucks for Tim Cook. All these things. Like, you're pushing them towards China, which they already, there's a whole thing with Apple and China. And, getting all the manufacturing done in China has created like the drones and the software and the hardware that they've built over there. They built that economy by going there and getting cheap labor, Apple and these other companies. Like, there's a whole book on it. And it's bad. Like, it's, China has like they have all the rare earth metals, they have all the technology, they have an army of drones, they have all this shit because American companies funded that, right? But, in all that, him saying, him celebrating Tim Cook kissing his ass, it's bad. Like, this is fucking bad. Like, this is, it's a clown show, right? It's WWE. Okay, so this is from a while back. You see Trump is a little bit younger here.
All Americans need a Bible in their home, and I have many. It's my favorite book. I'm proud to endorse.
He's got many of them. He's got hundreds of them. It's his favorite book. He never reads it, but he has them all. He doesn't know anything about it. But he has them splattered about his multiple homes in his fishboy mouth.
And encourage you to get this Bible. We must make America pray again.
Okay, so, the Make America stuff, or the make stuff, make America great again, make Iran great again, make America healthy again, make America pray again. You can't force people to fucking pray. And reading the Bible is not prayer. They're two different things. One's reading and one's praying. But he's not a Christian, right? Like, we know all this stuff. This is from a while back. It's coming up. But, like, he's, the fact that the evangelicals have sold their souls. Like, all these people who are so desperate, they're kissing Trump's ass, which he loves. And he's a demon. Like, he's a fucking demon. That's what demons want, right? A spiritual person doesn't need to be propped up by other people. Well, let me get into that as we get into the voiceover, because I want to put that in the Journey series. So there's one more thing here. So, I tape NBA playoff games, and I fast forward through them to see if they're going to be any good. And then I'll watch the parts, whatever. The Phoenix Suns are overmatched against the Oklahoma City Thunder. It's the number one seed, the top team, the team with the most victories, the team that won the championship last year, Oklahoma City, and is playing the eighth seed, which is the Phoenix Suns, right? And the worst team in the playoffs. And, they're unmatched. And this was in the third quarter. And the score is Oklahoma City 93 and Phoenix 75. So they're beating them by 18 points. It's the game's over. It's a home game for Oklahoma City. And, I fast forward through this. I didn't see this play till afterwards. But there were a variety of plays. There was another play in the fourth quarter where they called a flagrant foul on this guy, Dylan Brooks, who's a kind of a villainous character. And they called this a foul. They called this I guess a technical on Devin Booker. I'll show you the play in a second. And for whatever reason, they're favoring Oklahoma City, right? Like Oklahoma City plays illegal physical defense. They grab and they're holding, they foul, and they make it impossible to play offense because the refs don't call fouls, right? But if you breathe on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, they call a foul, which the whole league and people are pissed about. It's become so obvious, right? So here is the play here. So Devin Booker gets bumped out of bounds by this guy here, right? And like he kind of flops. I mean, he's pushed out of bounds. The guy gets a foul called on him. And Devin Booker tries to save the ball, right? So his back is to the guy. And the ball hits the player, right? Like it hits the player. Now, you could say he's throwing it at the player because he knew where he was. And, you can do that. But you really can't prove it, right? You can't prove intent here. Like you can't say he was, like this is what you would do. You would save the ball because you don't know if a foul's getting called against you. And so you'd throw the ball in. And so, he throws it at the guy. And, and the guy doesn't react like the guy just, And also, and oftentimes you throw a ball off a guy when you're going out of bounds, sometimes hard off of the guy's face. And it bounces out of bounds off the guy, right? And that's not a technical. Like purposefully you throw the ball at somebody, you're falling out of bounds, and it hits their leg, hits them in the face, whatever it is, and then it goes out of bounds off of them. You can throw the ball as hard as you want and hit somebody, And so this should never be a technical foul because like his back's to him, he can't even see him. He could have just been saving the ball. But even if he's throwing it off of him purposely, that's a play. And they decide to call a technical foul. So he goes on to say this. This is kind of why I'm showing you this.
Through and through. It's bad for the sport, bad for the integrity of the sport. People are going to start viewing this as a WWE,
Yeah, so this is, you can say this about basketball because a lot of it has kind of gotten that way. Very performative, very whatever it is, right? There's a play earlier in the game where this guy, Dylan Brooks, who is very physical. They call him Dylan the Villain. He's on this guy's team. And he made a pretty good defensive play, and the ball's going out of bounds. And he had no shot at it, but he dove anyway, right? And it was just silly. Like he's diving for a ball that he has no way of saving. Just it's performative. It's like some WWE type flop. And the refereeing has gotten like a WWE, but not as much as Trump administration has. And what you have is like a bunch of dumb fuck Americans who have been like completely, fluoridated and, vaccinated and whatever it is, just mind fucked by the internet and 5G and 6G and just, everyone getting dumber and dumber and just being, retardicized, right? Like just being, binary and NPCs and having no will force and just watching WWE and lapping it up, right? The inability, like you can't even talk to these people. Like you can't talk to the majority of people. Like in terms of their consciousness, their whatever it is. It's just a WWE world now. And the fact that the WWE, like why would it even be successful? It's horrible. It's unwatchable. It's degraded. It's so fake. But and sports is following suit, like the success of the WWE. Now, ESPN features these guys coming on. And there was an interview going on, slipping through the ESPN channels. And there's like generational, there's a Rhodes guy now who's some other Rhodes, when I watched the WWE movie. And then there's Ric Flair and his daughter. And his daughter's being interviewed by like ESPN people, and she was bragging how they have more titles as a father-daughter. They have more titles than anybody else. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not real. Like you didn't win anything. It's scripted, right? Like, yeah, great. You've got more fake titles, right? And this is what Trump wants. Like Trump wants like fake, all these things. So let me switch over to voiceover here. Okay, so segue in from the WWE thing. I also have some comments about the ticks, and me mentioning ticks in videos. I want to give more thoughts about the tick thing. And then I'll look at the comments this morning, and then we'll see what else happens today. But this the WWE of the world, like this, it happened with Trump's fake assassination attempt, and the overall thing, which I've been saying for a while, and people are silently picking up on that as well, that Trump brags about everything, and he's a victim. Trump loves to talk about how he's been victimized and treated. He treated me so badly, and Thomas Crooks, he never mentions the guy's name. How many times have you heard Trump brag about killing Soleimani, right? There was, this Iranian and other people where Trump, he died like a dog and killed. He never talks about Thomas Crooks getting killed, right? He never talks about the patsy. I mean, the patsy for Charlie Kirk. He doesn't want to talk about that shit either. He doesn't talk about the failure of the Secret Service. He talks about how great they did when they allowed his head to be exposed, when they failed to take the shooter out, when they were on the roof. They had they have snipers on the roof behind Trump who are looking at a guy on a roof with a rifle, a rangefinder, for 8 minutes. People were warning that there was some guy on the roof with a gun. The snipers were looking at him, and they chose not to shoot him. Right? So, that's, it's so fucking fake. Everything about it was WWE. And Trump doesn't like to talk about it because he knows it's fake. Like, he'd be bragging about that in his big moment, fight. There's multiple things that, if it was any one of those things was real, Trump would talk about all the time. Because that's who he is. But it's WWE. It's accepted. Remember what he said after he won against Hillary Clinton, and they were chanting, lock her up. And he said, no, that played well before the election. He knows that there's stagecraft, there's, performance that's, it's political theater, right? He knows about all that shit. He was an actor. He was in Home Alone. He tried to get every cameo he could, any place that he did this. He did this thing with Slim Shady. Eminem was running for president years and years ago, and he was mouthing the words "shady, shady" as the crowd chanted "shady" on MTV, and he was mouthing the words the same way he mouthed the words "fight, fight, fight." Like, he wasn't yelling "fight, fight, fight." He was mouthing the words. He was not saying "fight, fight, fight." He was pumping his fist. Like, that was it was a WWE thing, from the fake blood to all the ketchup gate to the Band-Aid gate to the whole fucking thing. And people are finally picking up on it, but it doesn't matter because you have, dead people, like people who are fucking, they don't have a pulse. They're not, they're comatose. They're NPCs. The NPCing of the populace who are just hypnotized, and the hypnotized will never lie, right? Do you? There's a song by The Who. We won't get fooled again, because the hypnotized never lie. And then he says, "Do you?" to the audience. Like, he's telling his audience, you guys are hypnotized and you don't even fucking know it, right? And then you go, like, yeah, we are, fuck, yeah, we're fucking hypnotized, woo! Like that fucking dumb shit, right? And, you've gotten to the point where who do you believe? Like, do you believe people on the internet? No, because fucking they're lying, and all the fucking QBs and all, they're disinformation agents, and a lot of people who just love to lie, and everyone's based in their own perspective, right? Everyone's just locking into their dumb fuck beliefs about being a Republican or Democrat, and, subjectively being for one and subjectively going against the other despite the facts. I mean, just, people don't think about fairness. They don't think about anything. They're selfish and self-involved, right? Everything's about them, the whole thing, and all the stuff to do with, like, social media and posting false social media pictures. My wife was saying that there's, like, a theory now that nobody's actually posted on social media anymore. It's just bots talking to each other, which is, is kind of true. Like, I mean, Facebook is is a desert, and you have these various things, but, like, a lot of it's just bots and, all these things, right? Like those, I showed my wife the picture of those Iranian women who don't look like Iranian women at all, that look like AI generated headshots. And I was talking about how there was a period about 6 months ago where I got like 60 new subscribers to my Pockets of the Future Facebook page, which I don't like. I almost would delete it, but there's, lots of subscribers on it, then I don't post anything on it. And I get messages from over there, but it's on a browser I barely use, and I just, whatever. And I got these 60 new subscribers, and it all looked the same kind of pictures as those Iranian women, just like fake AI-generated fake accounts, bot accounts, and just, for no reason. I don't post anything. There's nothing to gain, right? But, they don't know because they're bots. Like everything's bots and fake, and people themselves are, without any, there's nothing inside people. They haven't developed anything internally. And so that's where we are as a country. And they are late to the party. People who get into something late, and it's all about them and not it's not about the lies and the obvious problem that we have is our society's fucked up. Like we're going in the wrong direction. People are getting worse. The system should help people be the best that they can be, right? Any system should help you be the best. Your religion, your economic system, your social system, your education. It should help you develop. Like people should be getting better and better with each generation. Like everyone should be getting better. And people are getting worse, right? That's why I was so grateful for the Sajmarg meditation, because it helps you become a better person. It pulls out your higher nature. Like it's, a rare, certainly now, but even in terms of historically, there aren't systems like that, right? And it's available, and why isn't everybody doing it? Not just the people that hear about it here. Like, why aren't you doing it? Why isn't everybody doing something that would make them better? Like, it's experiential. The Gratefullness meditation, why aren't people doing it? Well, they don't, people don't want to be better, right? People want to stay where it is. They don't want to develop. They don't want to, that's a natural thing to evolve. It's a natural thing to become, something more than you were yesterday. Like to be, that's an egotistical thing. That's something where you're becoming something. Your ego's becoming something. You're bettering yourself. In spirituality, you become less. Like you diminish, and your soul takes your place, right? You relinquish power, and you relinquish these things that your ego needs to be, to be great, to be whatever, and you allow divinity to flow through you. So that's a different stage. But people are becoming less and less, even on an ego level. They have less and less abilities, less and less, character qualities, less and less inside of them, less and less, right? And, and then needing validation, like I was talking about before. When people need external validation, it's because you have nothing inside of you. If you're right with God and you're living a way where you're making the world a better place and you're contributing, right? When my kids first started to milk cows, there's this kind of rite of passage. And my 8-year-old daughter milked a cow out for the first time. She milked like a gallon of milk out, like the cows weren't producing very much at that time. But, she was small, and it's physically hard. And there was this sense of contributing, right? It was like I could see it. Like, it was, the homestead fell apart, and there was things, but, they were helping me build buildings and put fences up, and, they were integral to the process. Like they were, their help was needed. But now you have this kid-centered model of raising kids where the kids have all these activities, and you're driving them around and trying to keep the kids happy and all this suburban shit. And, then there's the neglect where people are just like, fuck it, I don't even want to do anything for my kids, right? Like there's these two, whatever it is. But the kids aren't getting any sense of, contributing to the family, which is necessary because you feel good about yourself, right? When you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you don't need external validation because you're working to, you're contributing to something. You're making things better. You're doing things for people. You're serving other people, and you're serving the world as a whole, and you're fulfilling your duty, and you just feel, there's some sense of well-being. And and on a spiritual level, when you're working for God and you can have a relationship with God, that's the other thing. Like, all this hell and brimstone, all this stuff where people are shamed, and you're born a sinner, and they're scared to face God. It's because you're living a bad life, right? Wouldn't it be better if you go to heaven and God pats you on the back and says, "Job well done"? That you just wouldn't accept Jesus, as you'd be a piece of shit, but accept Jesus, and yeah, you're a piece of shit sinner, but Jesus got you in, but you don't deserve to be here. Isn't it better to deserve? Isn't it better to earn something than to fucking get it by cheating, right? Like, like this whole thing. I'm not talking just about Christianity. I'm talking about all of it. Like people forcing their way and, and lying to get things and manipulating to get things. It gives you a sense of, like foreboding that there's going to be karma and consequences for everything because people know there's consequences. Number one. And number two, you didn't deserve it. You didn't earn it. You don't feel good about it. You cheated to get it, right? Or you're buying something. You're paying for something. You don't, it's prostitution. Like you're paying for love. You're paying for friends. You're paying for, they're not around you because you're a good person and you don't have these people don't really care about you or know you. They're gravitating, they're kissing your ass like Trump said. He loved Tim Cook kissing his ass and the Saudi prince kissing his ass because, he's a president, not because, he's a great person. And that's why he needs validation. He needs all the people to kiss his ass and tell him how great he is. Because he knows he's a piece of shit, right? When you know you're a piece of shit, you're a piece of shit, and no external validation and no, appreciation from other people is going to reverse that. Like, it inside yourself, right? You know that you suck, right? No fake applause and no, any of these things you get. It doesn't mean anything. Like, and you don't need it. Like, if you're doing what you're supposed to do, you don't need any of that stuff. You don't need thumbs up on, Instagram or fucking social media. You don't need to be validated by strangers you don't know. And, there's nothing there. Like, you're just, you got to feel good about your work. Like, you got to feel good about the quality of your work, the performance that you're putting out there. Like, better than everyone else. You're there. When you're mailing it in, you're not really trying. You're not giving, you're not really working at something. You know what your thoughts are, what your intentions are, all these things. Like, like you know more than anybody else. Like, other people just have to guess, but you know what's going on inside of you. And so you can't run from that shit. That's why meditation's a wonderful thing, because it's right there in front of your fucking face. You can't pretend that you're something that you're not. You can't lie to yourself, right? People try to lie to themselves and make these rationalizations, but like deep down, you're full of shit, right? All right, so let's move over to the comments here. So I had a few comments about ticks. Somebody wrote, Paul, we always use to let the chickens clean the ticks from the dogs. Yeah, our chickens and our dogs do not have a relationship like that. The dogs chase the chickens away. We throw chicken food out. They have a place to get the chicken food in the coop, but sometimes we just throw some out because we're out there, or sometimes we, throw whatever it is. And everything likes chicken food. The cows. Sometimes the cows will get into the barn and tip over a barrel of chicken food and go to town. Like, they all love it. It's all the same stuff. We get organic stuff, but there's some, there's corn in it, whatever it is. Like, it's desirable. And sometimes the chickens chase the dogs away, and so on. But there was no way a chicken would be picking at the dog's ticks. Like, it just wouldn't happen for us. Maybe if it was a big old dog that just laid there and the chickens would go to town, but that's not the kind of situation we have here. There was another comment here, I believe, about ticks. Let me find it here and make it bigger. Your topics really get under my skin. Here we go. Your topics really get under my skin, but this taking it to the next level. Hearing about ticks was the last thing I wanted to hear about. I live in the forest line in New Hampshire. It's pretty bad here. Buying guinea fowl to see if that happens. Anyways, thanks for the info. I needed to hear it. Well, I think what I was trying to say, and again, I'm not a medical person, and I don't have any proof of this, but I have long doubted that ticks carry Lyme disease. Mosquitoes, my son got dengue fever, right? And, they say that dengue fever comes from mosquitoes. Well, first of all, if you are being poisoned by, like when you live in farmland, we live in the country, there's Monsanto corn and they're using glyphosate, for example, or other things, chemical fertilizers, whatever it is. Maybe not from Monsanto, but, whatever. And, there's things happening with chemtrails or whatever, or environmental things. And, you technically could sue these companies. Of course, the vaccine and other things. And now they're putting out a tick vaccine, right? And, they're pushing for depopulation. And you see the thing happening and all the stuff that's happened with the vax. But isn't it much easier to blame an animal? What do they blame COVID on? First, it was bats, and then it was pangolin, and then it was chickens. So when animals have a disease, like, I don't know how Lyme disease affects mice. You know, it's some sort of bacteria. It's like, or whatever it is, some sort of whatever it is that, you know, that they say triggers Lyme disease. So what they're saying is these mice have Lyme's disease, and a tick bites the mice, and it gets its first blood meal. And when it's, you know, the majority of ticks are the ones that they call larvae, right? They're very small, and those are the majority of ticks we see. I've only seen a few big ones, right? And then the larvae, if you allow it to, we'd see it in our cows more than anything. We'd pick these things off our cows and throw them to the chickens. And it's like a little bag of blood. If you've seen a little tick, it just gorges itself, and it becomes like 10 times its size, and maybe 20 times its size, right, from this little larvae. And then it falls off the animal, and it can't walk because its legs are so fucking small. It's got this big ass blood sac that it's carrying around, and you know it's filled with your blood, and it processes the blood, and when it does that, it adds an extra pair of legs, and it becomes bigger, right? It's what's called a larvae, and it could have, if it got its first blood meal from a mouse that had this bacteria, it could be, you know, it could have Lyme, according to the professionals. But these big ticks, you totally notice. Like I notice when a small tick's crawling on me, right? And it takes a 24-hour period, and it's taking the disease from a mouse and giving it to you. Now with mosquitoes are biting somebody with dengue fever or malaria, and then they bite you. And again, it's sucking your blood, and you know it's a very small thing, but it happens in seconds. Whereas a tick, it takes 24 hours to transmit a disease. You know, diseases usually don't make it from one species to another, right? And so, you know, they first identified Lyme's disease in 1975, the same time that, you know, vaccines went from 1 in 10,000, you know, that it went from 1 in 10,000 people having autism to now 1 in 20 something, right? You know, so, you know, like it's a lot easier to blame animals for something, and then you can go and wipe out the animals. You can go and wipe out farms and say, oh, we got this bird flu, we got to kill all your chickens. You can control the food supply. You can cause all kinds of issues that way. And so, you know, I just don't trust the tick idea. I mean, you know, I'm not advising people to let ticks bite. I mean, no one wants to be bit by a tick. It's creepy. You know, ticks, they start off as insects. They only have 6 legs, and then they get an extra pair, and they're a form of a spider. But, you know, what I was trying to say in the thing is, like, I really don't believe the story now that I know that those little ticks, the small ones, which that's where you get lots of them, like that's where you see them, you know, are the ones that are carrying the Lyme's disease. And what about dogs? Do they get it, and how do they react to it? You know, like it's just, I mean, it's just for humans. And so, like, I don't know what it is, but I bet it's something environmental that's being caused by either 5G, 6G now, or fucking, you know, I mean, all this stuff, the vax. I mean, there's so many things that could be, you know, making, and then there's always, so you got Lyme's disease, those fucking ticks, right? It's easy to blame an animal when, you know, we can't sue a tick, right? You know, like these types of things. So, you know, I mean, I just don't believe it. Like, I don't believe anything from the government. It may be true. Some of the comments were, you know, they got bit by ticks and then they had a horrible situation. But I don't know. Like, was it, you know, were you actually bit by a tick, or was it that? And I don't know. Like, maybe that's true. Like, you know, I can't say. Or did the tick bite you and then you also got sick from something else at the same time, right? Like, there's no way to tell. You have to trust the medical community, and I just don't trust them, you know, especially about something like this. Anyways, let's see if there's any more comments here. The second comment in, someone wrote, so where does your TDS come from, Paul? Like, you know, why leave a comment like that? You're just saying, hey, everyone look at me, I'm a dumb fuck. I can't think for myself. I just repeat stuff. I'm a complete moron and a complete asshole. I mean, if you're not a bot, if you're just a person and you're saying something that fucking stupid, you're saying, hey, everyone look at me, I'm retarded. I'm like fucking, you know, I got shit for brains. Like, why would you come here and say something like that, right? Like, you think I'm going to be like, oh my God, you're right, I got TDS? Or, oh, I better not talk. Everyone's going to see I have TDS. Like, what do you think is going to happen? You think that's going to affect me in some way? Like, if I don't comment on it, you're just saying to everybody who reads your comment, hey, everybody, look at me. I'm fucking retarded. I'm a fucking dumb fuck. I'm worthless. I'm a total piece of shit. Like, I can't think for myself. Like, if you had something legitimate to say about what I'm saying in the video, right? You know, the video is, let me read the title of the video. here from yesterday. Trump's Epstein Charlie Kirk lawsuit failed. MAGA never was, and Tucker's gay brother. And to that, you're saying this thing, right? To that, you're going to say, where does your TDS come from? Like, that's what you're going to say? Like, that's your fucking, do you have something substantive to say? Like, not that I give a shit because I don't have a complaint department, but that would be like saying that you had critical thinking skills. Like, you could watch my video and criticize something legitimately, but you can't because everything they say is true. And Trump's a worthless piece of shit. And you're just too fucking dumb and too brain dead. I mean, again, unless you're a bot. But there's lots of people who actually say shit like that. Where's your TDS come from, Paul? It's just you're announcing to the world, yeah, I am like fucking, like the worst possible fucking version of a human being I could be. I mean, other than criminal behavior, you're saying that you have nothing inside, you have no value, and that you're like, this is the only thing you can do. I mean, and it's so late in the game. Like, you should at least be like aware, maybe I might look like an asshole. Maybe other people see something I don't. Like Trump's so bad right now, and it's so bad. Like, everybody's bailing on him. And everybody has TDS, the whole world. Like, it's just what cults say. You're saying I'm a cult member to a worthless piece of shit, right? A dumb fuck. Trump's stupid. And, like, how stupid are you that you're falling for it? I mean, at this place, this part of the, this late in the game, right? Here's another comment. Okay. Tucker and Buckley, who the fuck names their kids knowing that they have to go to school with other kids? It's the same kind of death wish, nomenclature. I'm not sure what that word is. And to that, Buckley's effeminate mannerisms and voice, I can only imagine they're bullying these two must have endured as children. No, these are wasps. They kept on using the word wasps. These are rich, successful. Their dad worked for the CIA. They're part of the club. I mean, this is, these are these rich elite fucks, right? They named their kids like that, right? This is, they're part of, they're born into it, right? They're, like Trump, Trump was in his family. People who are born into wealth and privilege, and also people who are educated and intellectual. These families, like the Kennedys, right? And you can see a difference in their, there was those two, I forget their names, Casey and Callie Means. They're healthcare people, and they went and interviewed, and they're brilliant in what they talk. They're really smart people, and they know shit. Like that guy I always talk about that doctor who talked about Parkinson's, and their terminology and what they know about, him knowing what he knows about Parkinson's, and Callie and Casey Means growing up in D.C., and these people who, they compete for elite educational positions and elite education, and they're in these top tier schools, and lots of them are really smart, but they're not smart. Like they're smart in their their limited worldview, and for them to break free from the beast, it's almost impossible. Some of these people are targeted. They're gifted and talented, and they're targeted, and they start grooming them. Rachel Maddow was like one of these people. Jon Stewart, they're in these programs, and they get targeted, and they get co-opted early on in their life, right? And so, that's where Tucker Carlson comes from. He's a part of that club. You can see it. It made more sense when you see his brother. And his brother hangs out with all these people. Like, they all dislike Trump, and they looked at Trump as being like a bore and someone not in their level intellectually, and all of his poor character qualities. And he only got 4% support from all those DC insiders, right? They didn't like him because he's too lowbrow. But then they all came around because they saw the way Trump could manipulate the dumb fucks. I mean, this is all about manipulating and making people dumber and targeting them as an audience, right? They never speak to smart people. I want to talk about this show, Paradise. So the first season of Paradise, I started watching the show. I have these shows. My wife we both take like TV naps, and sometimes she'll take a long one. So I'll watch sports and some other things. So I was starting to watch the show Paradise, and there's something I didn't like about it, but it got better. The storylines got better. And the 7th episode in the first season, a spoiler alert, there's a show on Hulu. It's about, there's an apocalyptic event, and they are preparing an underground city. The president and some of these corporate people. And they're preparing this underground city. And the murder of the president takes place in the underground city. And it's a good murder mystery. And the apocalyptic stuff, and they keep on flashing, backwards in timelines, which is the good storytelling. And the 7th episode, I think it is, where the big event happens. And there's a volcanic eruption, and there's massive tsunamis, and all these coastal regions are destroyed. And then all the powers that be release nuclear weapons, because they're all trying to harvest resources, and they want to take out all the other competitors before, this whole thing happens. And the president has an EMP protocol which disables all electronics on the planet, and he presses it right before he goes into the bunker. And that whole episode is sublime. It's a wonderful episode. It's like, I watched it twice. An amazing thing. And then we started watching the second season, and I hadn't seen the second season. So I watched the first season again with my wife, who really loved the show. We started watching the second season, and they start developing new characters who, they use whole episodes for an 8-part fucking season. And at the end of the thing, there's a nuclear meltdown for no reason at the end of the fucking second season. And the second season goes from bad for worse. And the reason is that they try to make all these women badasses. Badass physical people, badass murderers, badass corporate, badass leaders. The way men try to be badass, but like men kind of know it's fake or false machismo, these movies, but women just don't carry it off in TV and shows and movies. These one-liners, I'll be back, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, these kind of things. They're just not good at it. I mean, maybe some women are, but for the most part, they just don't pull it off, and it's not really in the wheelhouse for women to do, and they keep on trying to force these narratives. And the women are the powerful figures. But even worse than that, they have these moments where they're in crisis, and time is of the essence, and they have these emotional fucking talks that nobody fucking has, where people show a real rich dim depth into their internal world, but not a real internal world. The way that people would go into therapy and then they make up this kind of, what's going on inside of them. It's all performative, and they're all sharing and oversharing about shit that's all made up anyway. And it's so hard to listen to, and it's totally unrealistic. And like I said, time is of the essence. Like, they have a limited time to get something done, and they stop to have a fucking heart-to-heart, hug somebody they haven't seen in a while, and give them an explanation of what's going on. Like, there's a scene at the end where the father who's been out of the bunker, finding his wife who decided to, even though the president warned him, and this guy knows that there's going to be an apocalyptic event, but he just doesn't have the details. And his wife goes to Atlanta anyway, because her job is so important to her, and she wouldn't listen to her husband, and she gets caught outside the bunker, right? It's just really bad. And he apologizes to her when he has to go and fucking get her back, even though she caused the problem, right? But his daughter's trapped in an elevator with another girl, and the elevator is collapsing for no reason. Like, they're having a nuclear meltdown, but, when these things start, like, there's a mechanical issue, but all the other things start imploding in the building, even though the mechanical issue has nothing to do with it, right? Just because of dramatic effect. And he jumps down in the elevator to rescue his daughter and this other girl. And he hugs his daughter and spends about a minute fucking interacting with her as the elevator is about to collapse, right? Just stupid shit like that. And it's unbearable. It gets unbearable, the fucking dialogue and the things. And then, they have this ridiculous nuclear explosion, and the people outside aren't, blasted by radiation. just unrealistic shit. And it went from like a mostly good show to a horrible show, and they leave it hanging that there is an AI computer which can't talk. It has the ability to time travel, and it's underneath it's 100 miles away from the bunker, and it's underneath the Denver airport. They show that demonic horse at the end of this, so they get you to tune in to the next season, because they're going to bring this AI bot that's going to that it can time travel to go back and fix the whole fucking thing, was just silly. But, this feminist agenda and this liberal agenda and trying to make things, trying to co-opt action movies and action figures and trying to put women in positions that are traditionally, male roles and doing it so badly and so contrived is a big problem with all this stuff, right? And this is what I'm talking about. Just making things unrealistic and unnatural. As bad as some action movies are, and lots of action movies suck, and they're not realistic. These things are so much worse. Okay, so I just got a message from a guy I call the Dodgy Truther, though. I do the Sajmark meditation, and there's this guy named Dodgy who became the fourth master. He's not Dodgy, he's Kamash Patel. Dodgy, it's his own, the name that he created, his own nickname. It means like respected uncle or something in India, but it also means, dodgy, like it's spelled D-A-A-J-I, but it sounds like dodgy, D-O-D-J-Y. An English term that means from England, which means like a scumbag, criminal, whatever. But this guy who's really against Kamash Patel, this guy, the Dodgy Truther, and he sends me stuff from time to time. And Kamash Patel's son, both his sons, but one of them in particular, was involved in a scam that involved Kamash was a pharmacist. He owned 7 pharmacies in Staten Island. He lived in America. He was born in India, but lived in America. And now he lives in India, and he doesn't come back to America. He hasn't been back in years. And his kids who were born in America, so they're American citizens, took his 7 pharmacies and then started a business during COVID where they are delivering pharmaceutical products to people through online website. And they overstated the company's value and got $180 million investor money and then absconded with it to India. And he's taken his kids' names off of his Wikipedia page, which this guy sent to me, right? This guy, the Dodgy Truther, he sent me a whole bunch of links to this stuff. And he says that ChatGTP doesn't link heartfulness with this scam, but he says Gemini did, and this is what Gemini says. The connection between the Patel family and Medley Pharmacy, Medley, not Medley, and heartfulness is quite complex, involving significant legal development in 2024. Here is the breakdown of the situation as of 2026. The SEC case against Medley Health Incorporated. You are correct that there is a Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, enforcement action against Marg Patel. He named his kids Sahaj and Marg, based in Chargy's suggestion. So Sahaj Marg is the natural path. So Marg means path, so Path Patel. And he's the guy who, you can find there's articles about this. The case in 2024, the SEC charged Marg Patel, former CEO of Medley Health, along with the former CFO and head of operations, with defrauding investors. The allegation, the SEC, alleges that between February 2021 and August 2022, the executives provided fraudulent financial information to investors. Specifically, they're accused of overstating the revenue by creating millions of dollars in fake prescriptions to inflate the company's valuation. Sahaj Patel and Kamash Patel, it's his other son Sahaj. While Sahaj Patel was co-founder of Medley and Kamash Dodgy was reportedly the early investor supporter. Well, it was his pharmacies, right? This is a family business, which Gemini doesn't understand or know. The SEC primarily charges in 2024 were directed at Marg Patel and the other 2 executives for fraudulent capital raising. However, the litigation describes a scheme that ballooned Melody's revenue during the time both brothers were involved in the startup's growth. Connection to Heartfulness and Brighter Minds, the 4 individuals, Brighter Minds is a scam that Kamlesh does. Kamlesh, Pratma, Saj, and Marg are the core first family of the Heartfulness movement. They're connected to the programs as follows. Kamash Patel, the spiritual guide and president of Sri Ramchandra Mission, SRMC, and Heartfulness. Saj and Marg Patel, sons of Daji, have been involved in various capacities. Marg has frequently written for the Heartfulness magazine and contributed to the community literature. Brighter Minds is an educational initiative and often associated with Heartfulness Institute. It focuses on brain observation and cognitive enhancement for children. While it is marketed as a separate educational program, it is deeply integrated into the Heartfulness ecosystem and often conducted at centers. This is, I've talked about this quite often. They put blindfolds on kids, and kids look through blindfolds and pretend to solve Rubik's cubes by smelling colors and feeling colors and tapping on the cube and hearing colors. It's a bullshit thing that's been disproven over and over again. Fraud allegations, Medley versus Brighter Minds. It's important to distinguish between the legal status of the two entities. Medley Incorp, the pharmacy, there is official SEC fraud and history of bankruptcy filed late 2022. The allegation of fake revenue and deceitful conduct is a part of a formal federal legal proceeding against the executives, including Mark Patel. The Brighter Minds program, there is no SEC or federal fraud case against Brighter Minds. However, it's faced significant and public scientific criticism. Skeptics and rationalist groups, particularly in India, have labeled the program as pseudoscience or a scam because it claims that children can see while blindfolded, often called midbrain activation. And they changed that name. Like Daji got duped by a kid my family knows. When I was in India, there was this kid that my kids hung out with, and my ex was helping the woman homeschool the kid. And the kid's kind of a scammer. He's kind of like a Trump, like a bullshitter. Funny kid. And he pretended to read with his feet because he was doing this midbrain activation before Daji knew about it. And Daji was so impressed that he decided to franchise this thing. I think he believed it at first because he's stupid. And then when he realized it was a fraud, he knew that it would be totally embarrassing for him to come out and say it was a fraud. So that's midbrain activation. That's how dumb this fucking thing is. While people call it a fraud in social scientific sense, it has not faced the same criminal securities and prosecution that Medley has. And so there's more about this thing. So, he sums up the thing. Gemini sums up this thing. Anyways, I thought I'd share that because I thought it was funny, and this is going to go in the Journey series as well. I'll keep this open, this voiceover, because it's only 12 o'clock, and I'll see if anything big happens here before I'll wrap up the voiceover. If I have to, I'll add video content here somewhere. If some big kind of bombshell thing happens. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely pointing for the apocalypse. And the ascension, everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.